Chapter 4140. Student Arbor from the Royal Academy and Hong Shang from the Radiance Academy. Please come to the stage immediately. As the host Nuno called out in a loud and excited voice, the crowd surged with emotions and roars. Half of the people in the arena stood up in a frenzy, waving their arms as they chanted Little Crown Princess name. Our dear Qiao Mu, who had been dozing off, was inexplicably energized, and she blinked at the dense crowd around her. Eldest young Master Qin couldn't help but rub his forehead and sigh. Look at Jojo's rallying power. He hasn't even gone up yet, but the crowd is already so excited. Right, looks like everyone's the same as me. Qin Zhu exclaimed excitedly. We're all waiting to see this battle. Whoosh whoosh. Two figures flew onto the revolving arena from the Royal Academy and the Radiance Academy respectively. Hong Shang from the Radiance Academy, Royal Academy Arbor. Please advise us. Arbor and Hong Shang raised their hands and saluted at the same time, then flew up into the air. Hong Shang's first move was a palm containing 60% of her divine power, which flew over. The mighty divine power wrapped in a cluster of flames flashed in her palm. If it were anyone else, they would naturally be sent flying by her palm. But who was Arbor? When he saw her palm flying over, he immediately leaped into the air and flew forward, receiving her palm expressionlessly. After a loud bang, the two people's hair fluttered, and their clothes fluttered. They were blown by a fierce gust of wind. Their clothes fluttered and their sleeves fluttered. Hong Shang's expression changed slightly, and she reached out to stroke her slightly numb right arm. She abruptly raised her head to look at Arbor. You're not a level 3 spiritual master? How is that possible? How could a level 3 spiritual master possibly receive her, Hong Shang's palm? It's obvious. Arbor pulled out a black ferrule from his conscious and suspended it in midair. His eyes sparkled, revealing the joy of meeting a worthy opponent. Setting aside her arrogant attitude from before, this girl's cultivation was still pleasing to the eye. It was rare to meet a young girl whose cultivation was on par with hers, so she naturally wanted to have a good spar. You. Hong Shang's eyes flashed with disbelief. What is your cultivation level? Arbor blinked and took off the aura-concealing talisman hanging on his waist. In a split second, everyone could only see that the little girl's aura was suddenly rising, and her cultivation was rising rapidly. His vast and mighty divine power spread out in all directions. Floating light flickered, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Take one of my moves first. Arbor kicked slightly with the tip of his foot, and his body once again leaped several feet into the air. In the blink of an eye, several tens of lines of fire swept down along the ferrule. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. They were like exploding fireworks as they assaulted Hong Shang in unison. Hong Shang hurriedly stretched out his hand to lay down a fire spirit defensive shield. His expression was solemn as he pulled out a long sword from his consciousness and blocked the attack. More than 10 lines of fire wrapped around her body at a ferocious speed. Through the fire spirit defensive shield, a series of explosive sounds rang out like that of green bamboo. Hong Shang took a few steps back, and a trace of disbelief appeared on her face. A level 2 divine master? No, it couldn't be. His cultivation level looked like a level 2 divine master, but the extent of his divine power was actually comparable to a level 5 or 6. How could it be like this? Why did you put an aura-concealing talisman on your body? Hong Shang gritted her teeth and said angrily. Arbor lowered his head and glanced at her. His expression was neither fast nor slow as he said indifferently, to trick people. Why else? Chapter 4141. Sir Jojo felt that this woman's question was simply a bit laughable. If she wasn't trying to trick people, why would she hang so many aura-concealing talismans on her body? Yes, they were so many. A level 1 aura-concealing talisman reduced one's cultivation by 5 levels. But her multiple aura-concealing talismans could be adjusted up to 20 levels. She couldn't possibly adjust herself to such an outrageous minor realm, like level 10 mystic cultivator, right? She was already being disdained to this extent after being adjusted to level 3 spiritual cultivator. Humph. If she really adjusted herself to level 10 mystic cultivator, haha, wouldn't she be stabbed to death by people's gazes? What did her cultivation have to do with a bunch of people who worried about her? Even if she was only a little level 10 mystic cultivator right now, humph, Jojo's lotus was still Jojo's, and no one could snatch it away. The little stoic revealed a bewitching smile at Hong Shang across from her. If this mechanical smile with a crack at the corner of her mouth was called a smile, then this smile of hers was too frightening, Hong Shang thought. Withdrawing his gaze, Hong Shang lowered his eyes, and the sword in his hand abruptly overflowed with flames and expanded explosively. The fire spirit in her hand slowly swayed in her palm, slowly splitting into 4, 5, 6 clumps. Boom! The green flames transformed into several arm-length green eagles. They screeched as they charged in the little stoic's direction to surround her. At the same time, the fire spirit barrier around Hong Shang couldn't hold on any longer and abruptly transformed into a fire spirit barrier, blocking in front of him. Even so, Arbor couldn't help but have a whole new level of respect for her. After all, not just anyone could control a full-body defensive fire spirit barrier. As expected of a gifted disciple of Glory City, she was indeed different from those children of ordinary large patrician families. However, even though her dark green fire spirit transformed into several eagle spirits and encircled Arbor, their speed was still too slow in the little stoic's eyes. Too slow. The little stoic took a step in midair and arrived in front of one of the eagle spirits in an instant. She clenched her fist and instantly swung it at the eagle spirit's head. In the blink of an eye, that eagle spirit, which was half a person's height, turned into nothingness under the little stoic's fist. Hong Shang's body trembled slightly as his divine power dispersed. The little stoic smashed that eagle spirit with a punch, which immediately drew raucous cheers from the audience. Amidst these roars, the stoic face once again strode in front of another spirit hawk. From the moment he punched to the heavy blow, everything was done in one breath. That unlucky eagle spirit was once again reduced to scattered divine power in her hands. Hong Shang's face turned even paler as he let out a sharp whistle, summoning the remaining eagle spirits to his side. No sooner said than done. Emerald green wood spiritual energy seeped out from the little stoic's hand. A wisp of wood spirit, which had taken the form of a man-eating flower, swayed gently on her porcelain white palm. In a matter of minutes, he landed on the ground. Amidst the cries of the crowd, the man-eating flower rapidly grew to the height of an adult, the height of 2 adults, the height of 3 adults looking down from above. It opened its ferocious mouth and bit down at the tiny Hong Shang, whose face was filled with terror. Fast, so fast that no one could react immediately. Hong Shang was indeed not an ordinary person. With a high jump, she was already enveloped by several eagle spirits burning with green flames, and flew into the sky. Arbor's gaze chilled. Seeing her fly off the ground, he didn't say another word and directly swung a giant water spirit palm. The giant transparent water palm pressed down, and Hong Shang raised her hand to block it. Chapter 41-42. However, the giant palm instantly expanded in the air as the light and shadow appeared. It blocked above her head like it was covering the sky and the sun. It slammed down heavily. Hong Shang raised her hands high above her head, but felt the giant palm pressing down like a mountain. It was heavy and carried a majestic aura as it slammed down. It slammed her entire body down heavily. Her calves were heavily pressed and were embedded in the arena. Her entire body was shortened by a small amount. The defensive wall in front of her instantly shattered into pieces. Hong Shang made a prompt decision, slapping the ground with both hands. She suddenly flew up from the ground of the arena. The giant transparent palm, formed by the water spirit, once again pressed down from the sky. Hong Shang's movements were very quick. Her body had already leapt into the air. The numerous fire spirits in her hands transformed into giant eagles that pecked at the giant palm. This woman had 8 levels of fire spirit power, and her aura was very strong. Those few eagle spirits charged at the water spirit's giant palm. When the two came into contact, red and blue lights were released like fireworks. The giant eagles formed by 8 levels of fire spirits seemed to cry out, flapping their wings and flying forward, roasting the water spirit's giant palm in front of them. A group of outsiders watching the show couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat for the little crown princess. In their view, this battle was really too dangerous. The little crown prince stood on a giant man-eating flower that was swaying its head, controlling the water spirit's giant palm to attack Hong Shang. Hong Shang, however, seemed to be handling the situation with ease and ease. The sword in her hand was completely red, as if it was a blazing sword that was surrounded by layers of fire spirits. The sword in her hand chopped and stabbed, making it so that not even a drop of water could pass through. Her moves were also very quick and fierce. In just a few minutes, she had exchanged a dozen moves with the little crown princess. The water spirit's giant palm pressed down like a group of mountains. Hong Shang's expression changed slightly. She was once again slapped down by the giant palm, and was directly pressed into the original hole in the arena. Arbor's graceful reflection was like a flowing wind, arriving in front of Hong Shang in a few breaths. At the same time, that blooming man-eating flower was waving its branches and leaves in the wind. It lowered its head and bit at Hong Shang's head. Instantly, there was a wave of frightened cries. Hong Shang's expression abruptly changed, and before he could even turn around to resist, he felt his vision darken. A serene and refreshing fragrance flooded into her body from all directions. The crowd was stirred up, and there were even some who couldn't help but jump up. His eyes were focused on the fight on the stage. Mother, it was eaten. How could ordinary people understand what was going on? He only knew that the little girl's emerald green man-eating flower could actually swallow half of the other party's body in one gulp. Hong Shang was currently hanging upside down in the air. Everything above his stomach had been eaten by the man-eating flower. Only 2 legs were left, kicking chaotically in the air. Senior Sister Hong. Senior Sister Hong. The one-star Radiance Academy students couldn't help but stand up and glare angrily at the stoic-faced little crown princess in the arena. The little crown princess found the accusatory look on her face a little strange. What? Wasn't life and death in the arena a matter of fate? She hadn't even dealt with their senior sister Hong yet, and they were already glaring at her with such resentment? What a strange bunch of people. Arbor glanced at them indifferently and asked in a clear and cold voice, "Let me ask you, do you concede?" The expressions of everyone from Radiance Academy changed. Chapter 41-43. They did not think that this little crown princess would have such a strange temperament. It turned out that she came to the stage to compete with senior sister Hong with the intention of beating her, until she was convinced. Senior sister Hong was their Radiance Academy's most talented senior sister, and also the granddaughter of Minister Hong. She was such a proud person. How could she lower her head in front of the crown princess in front of everyone? Not to mention admitting defeat. It was impossible for him to admit defeat verbally. Radiance Academy's Cha Pinchao quickly stood up and shouted, "Crown Princess, my senior sister Hong admits defeat. Please let her go." Arbor blinked and pretended to be puzzled. "I don't think I heard her say the word admit defeat." Everyone could not help but look at her speechlessly. You've already released the man-eating flower, and ate half of her head into her stomach. Even if she wants to admit defeat, she won't be able to open her mouth, okay? Cha Pinchao cupped his hands at her, and said with a faint expression, "Sorry, Crown Princess, my senior sister Hong was too arrogant and rude. Please be magnanimous and let her go." How could she be excused for her previous actions, just by saying that she was arrogant and rude? How could there be such an easy thing? Arbor's mouth could not help but curl up into a cold smile. Previously, she walked in front of Sir Jojo with her nose in the air, and asked her to leave her husband. She really wanted to ask this Miss Hong Shang, "Where did you get your confidence from?" In her life, she hated those who had nothing to do, and always liked to look at others with a pair of disdainful eyes. Simply creating trouble out of nothing. I want her to admit defeat to me personally. Arbor coldly stared at Cha Pinchao. Can you make this decision for her? If you can't, then stop talking nonsense. A female student from Radiance Academy could not help but shout at the 2 hosts. What are you guys still standing there for? Quickly announce the end of the competition. Nyo Nyo and Duo Duo looked at each other, and revealed a helpless smile to the crowd of Radiance Academy students. Sorry, your school's senior sister Hong Shang did not admit defeat. Nor did she fall off the stage according to the rules. The match can still continue. What? The students of Radiance Academy roared in dissatisfaction one after another. Are you guys crazy? If this goes on, are you trying to kill our senior sister Hong? If Hong Shang was engulfed by the man-eating flower for a long period of time, his upper body would slowly be invaded and devoured by the power of the wood spirit. What kind of joke was this? This wasn't considered a loss? Why is this competition so dogmatic? You're not done yet. You're nagging nonstop. So much nonsense. Xiao Mu abruptly beckoned at that man-eating flower. Immediately, everyone saw that the man-eating flower that was originally several feet tall had turned into specks of wood spirit star halo in the air, all of which were absorbed into her palm. The group from Radiance Academy looked at their senior sister Hong Shang with a heavy expression as she fell from the sky in a daze. Senior sister Moss, seeing that Hong Shang was about to land on the ground, the two hosts breathed a sigh of relief and were about to announce the end of the competition. Everyone instantly widened their eyes in horror. They saw the little stoic charge forward and suddenly land a heavy punch on Hong Shang's delicate face. Hong Shang spat out a mouthful of fierce blood. She was sent flying by this vicious punch. Chapter 41-44. However, this wasn't the end. The little girl leaped into the air, as fast as a flood dragon escaping from a rabbit, and abruptly teleported in front of Hong Shang. Her foot landed heavily on Hong Shang's back, sending her plummeting from the sky. At this time, the two hosts were completely stupefied. They tightly clutched the loudspeaker and blinked, just as they were about to heave a sigh of relief and immediately announce the end of the match. They saw the little girl's savage figure flash to Hong Shang's side again, and her fist landed on Hong Shang's other cheek. She directly sent Hong Shang flying half a day into the air again. Everyone simultaneously wrote a large fuck. In their minds, pairs of dog eyes couldn't resist glowing as they stared at the little girl's nimble figure flashing back and forth, gasping in amazement. The little stoic was as fast as lightning and thunder. She flashed, and flashed again, punching, kicking, smashing, and throwing in all sorts of ways. Everyone only saw Hong Shang bouncing back and forth in the air, not landing on the ground for a long time. They couldn't resist covering their eyes. The little crown princess was too savage. After a torrential beating, the little crown princess finally kicked Hong Shang back to the ground. Do you admit defeat? The little girl asked with a rather nasty expression. Did this girl feel very wronged? Sir Jojo still had a bellyful of anger in his heart? Did a person jump out and say that she had some relationship with the crown prince's maternal grandfather and order her around? Simply laughable. Everyone from Glory Academy instantly recovered their wits and jumped up in surprise. You actually treat senior sister Hong like this? Senior brother Cha, what do you think of this? Cha Pincho's expression was naturally unsightly. Their Glory Academy's number 1 or 2 senior sister Hong challenged the little stoic crown princess, but she was actually beaten up like this, and was now in such a sorry state. Arbor raised a finger at the people from Glory Academy, and stared disdainfully at them. You don't admit defeat? Come and fight. Glory Academy's Hong Gui challenges Royal Academy's Arbor. Glory Academy's Zhou Bao challenges Royal Academy's Arbor. Glory Academy. Several Glory Academy students stood up in succession. Arbor glanced over coldly and waved his hand. Come. Judging from his disdainful appearance, he completely didn't take these male students from Glory Academy seriously. They were originally hot-blooded youths, so how could they endure such provocation? The eyes of the students from Radiance College turned cold, and they instantly jumped up. Without saying a word, they dashed towards the stage. Hey you guys! The host Duo exclaimed. This is against the rules. You can't come up. It's not the team battle yet. Wait! Several Glory Academy students drew out their weapons from their conscious and ruthlessly hacked at Xiao Mu. Several streaks of light's glory tease. She's st. Estes eshes tease testit. Everyone's as fuck. The Glory Academy students were surrounded by the sand scorpion swarm that blotted out the sky. The scene was as silent as snow. The two hosts' mouths were agape, but they couldn't utter a sound for a long time. As expected, this was the free challenge competition. The fights didn't follow common sense at all. It was unexpected and rather willful. I'm going to sleep. Make up for 2 more chapters tomorrow. Chapter 41-45. Set up the formation. The boy called Zhou Bao shouted. The remaining 3 people immediately raised their swords and brandished them a few times. The 4 people stood in 4 corners, surrounding the bruised and swollen Hong Shang in the center. The 4 defensive walls connected like an iron bastion, blocking the endless sand scorpions. Senior Sister Hong. Senior Sister Hong. Hong Shang moved his neck and slowly raised one of his palms. She struggled to crawl up from the ground and staggered a few steps. When she raised her head, everyone saw her extremely wretched appearance. Not to mention her disheveled hair and crooked mouth. Both sides of her face were bruised from being punched. With a head full of bumps, she swayed as she stood there, gnashing her teeth and inhaling sounds coming from her throat. This fellow had clearly been beaten senseless by the little stoic's violent beating. Even now, she was still a bit dizzy and hadn't recovered her wits. Senior Sister Hong. Senior Sister Hong. Several Glory Academy students hurriedly called out. Hong Shang raised a hand and swung her disheveled hair. She gnashed her teeth and glared at Arbor, who was outside the defensive walls. The little stoic stood in the sea of sand scorpions and stared at her as usual. Her eyes were without ripples of emotion, neither joy nor sorrow. Rise! She shouted an incantation, and the ferrule flew out of her hand, rapidly spinning in midair with a whoosh. Boom! It heavily smashed into one of the walls. The 4 Glory Academy boys hiding inside the wall simultaneously took a step back. The entire wall shrunk inwards, and sizzling sounds came from outside the wall. Hong Shang abruptly straightened her body, and with trembling arms, she took out a pill from her inner world and hastily swallowed it. At the same time, the pitch-black ferrule circled in the air before returning to the little stoic's hand with a whoosh. An endless stream of sand scorpions crawled over, noisily crawling towards the top of the 4 walls. Senior Sister Hong. Set up the formation. Hong Shang wielded her treasured sword and slashed out a lightning-like blaze in the air. Her figure abruptly moved, and the 4 people abruptly drew close to the center. Their backs were pressed against each other, and the light of their swords intertwined, setting up a 5-piece defensive formation. Hong Shang threaded her way out from the middle of the 4 people, and her figure rose up. He raised his sword in the air and held it horizontally across his chest. A strong sword intent came out of the sword and swooped down on the scorpions on the outer wall. The sword whistled, and the sword intent fell, slashing a 3-foot-wide crack in the arena. Originally, he thought that under this chop, countless sand scorpions would be chopped off the stage. But to his surprise, only one of the scorpions was left alive. They continued to crawl toward the 2 sides of the crack in an orderly manner. Rustle, 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 the crawling speed was very fast. In just a moment, layer upon layer, densely packed together, crawling along the 4 smooth defensive walls. The onlookers only felt that this was a visual shock. In front of him was a sea of sand scorpions, extending endlessly. The icy and emotionless little stoic, dressed in snow-white school uniform, strolled over leisurely in this black ocean. A green hairband was faintly discernible in her hair, making her look very elegant. Wall break! A cold glint flashed through the little stoic's eyes, and the startled swan dagger flew out from her conscious with a whoosh, scuttling to the front of the defensive wall at lightning speed. There was a buzzing sound as it tore through the air. One of the 4 defensive walls was abruptly broken open by the startled swan dagger. Like a shattered mirror, it shattered into powder with a whoosh, and spiritual energy diffused everywhere. Everyone simultaneously stood up and couldn't help but cheer. Chapter 41-46. Qi Xianxian also jumped up and angrily rolled up her sleeves. Scoundrels! How dare they gang up on my Jojo? I think they must have eaten a bear's heart and a leopard's gall. Xianxian, don't be impatient. The little fatty hastily pulled her back. Look at our Jojo. He's handling it with ease, and is clearly enjoying himself. Everyone silently glanced at the little fatty, and couldn't resist ridiculing him in their minds. Bro, you've hit the nail on the head. The little stoic's expression didn't change in the slightest when she was surrounded and attacked, and her appearance was even more relaxed and at ease. Moreover, who exactly was ganging up on who? Could it be that it wasn't the little stoic who summoned that sea of sand scorpions that blotted out the sky and covered the earth? The startled swan dagger spun in the air and returned to Arbor's conscious with a whoosh. In the blink of an eye, Arbor summoned Thunderclap and flew above the 5 people's heads with his sword. The third style of the ninth heaven's Thunderclap art, Infinite Swords returned to origin, instantly descended. It was as if the galaxy had shattered and eternity had been destroyed. Substantial sword lights and broken shadows that blotted out the sky abruptly flowed down from the sky. The 5 people from Glory Academy, including Hong Shang, were all ashen and utterly defeated. Hong Shang was even more incredulous, and she hastily threw out several dozen defensive talismans to form a formation around herself. She didn't even care about her 4 companions' lives. Right now, she only wanted to preserve her own life first. She already had no time to care about anything else. The sword shadows were like rainbows as they crashed down with a bang. Accompanied by the sizzling power of thunder and lightning, the sword lights sealed off their escape routes in all directions. It only took a few seconds. The 4 Glory Academy disciples were flung away with a blood-curdling scream. The sword lights enveloped Hong Shang. They directly shattered the defensive talisman formation around her into broken shadows. Everyone was stunned and held their breaths in anticipation. However, they saw the sword lights that streaked down from the sky condense into a sword shadow that floated in the air and aimed at Hong Shang's heart. The little stoic floated in the air and flashed in front of Hong Shang. She guided the sword with 2 fingers, her face as still as water and her eyes as cold as frost. Do you admit defeat or not? Hong Shang subconsciously took a small step back, due to her sudden increase in aura. He raised his head and breathed heavily. His gaze was fixed in midair without blinking. His heart was filled with shock and surprise. Who was this woman? How could his control of sword intent be so perfect? The sword will condensed into one in the air, and it could actually stop in midair so terrifyingly. It floated in front of her and obediently listened to her orders? Since you're convinced, why don't you kneel? Arbor scolded coldly. His eyes were clear and calm as he looked down at the woman before him. It wasn't that she wanted to make things difficult for this woman. Instead, she wanted everyone in Glory City to know that those who dared to provoke her and embarrass her in front of everyone would pay 100 times the price of losing face. Hong Shang stood stiffly on the spot and didn't say anything for a long time. Arbor raised her eyebrows impatiently. Looks like you're just not convinced. If that's the case, what's the point of keeping you alive? I'm impressed. I'm impressed. Zhou Bao and the other 3 male students from Glory City immediately knelt down on one knee and cupped their hands. It was us who were arrogant. If we have offended the Crown Princess in any way, please forgive us. Arbor coldly swept a glance over them. Her gaze once again fell on Hong Shang. Her eyes were as cold as ice and extremely callous. You're not convinced? Her clear voice revealed traces of chilliness. The killing intent around her slowly rose in an instant. I'm impressed. Senior Sister Hong, I'm impressed. Chapter 41-47. Arbor's cold gaze shot towards Zhou Bao and the rest. Does she have something to say? Does she need you to answer for her? Shut up. Zhou Bao and the rest bitterly smiled as they took a few steps back. Their eyes trembled as they looked at their surroundings. Speaking of which, it's strange. The sand scorpions that covered the sky had already stopped and were lying dormant on the ground, not moving an inch. However, Zhou Bao and the rest were clear that if they were to make any movements, the sand scorpions would definitely make a move and surround them again. Your Highness. Cha Pinchao led a few Glory Academy's disciples and hurriedly came to Emolien's side. He bowed and asked, "Can you come out and mediate?" For this matter to escalate to such a state, His Highness also has an unshirkable responsibility, right? If His Highness had told Senior Sister Hong about the young Crown Prince Consort's true cultivation level from the start, Senior Sister Hong would not have been so impulsive as to go up and fight the young Crown Prince Consort on the arena. Emolien was too lazy to even lift her eyelids. She only coldly glanced at him and said, "You're asking for trouble." Cha Pincho's heart was instantly filled with anger. Although he disdained Hong Shang, this foolish woman, he still came from Glory City with her. Hong Shang had lost so much face. As Glory City's disciples, how could they have any face? Naturally not. Emo Lien indifferently glanced at Cha Pinchao and sneered in her heart. Today, if these Glory City's disciples had even the slightest bit of respect for him, the young city lord, they wouldn't have come to provoke him and find trouble with his wife. He usually doesn't live in Glory City. All these years, his grandfather has been living in the capital, taking care of his mother. Usually, he's very negligent in managing Glory City's affairs. Currently, Glory City has 3 great consecrators, jointly managing it. Hong Shang's grandfather, Great Consecrator Hong, is one of them. It seems that after so many years, some people can no longer differentiate who is the true master of Glory City. Since they dared to be so arrogant, they should be prepared to dig their own graves. Your Highness. Emo Lien finally raised her eyes and looked at Cha Pinchao. Cha Pinchao was instantly frozen by the coldness in his eyes. He didn't even dare to move his upper body. The gaze of the man before them was truly a bit frightening. Within his sharp gaze was a trace of chilliness. In an instant, it was as if a smear of ice and snow had melted their hearts. It made everyone's breathing tighten involuntarily. You asked for it. His Highness the Crown Prince's cold voice caused the hearts of all the students of Radiance Academy to sink. It seemed that they had thoroughly offended the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess today. Cha Pinchao was furious. He could not help but secretly scold Miss Hong for being brainless. He had already said that if they wanted to provoke him, they had to do their homework. Now, after provoking the Crown Princess, he was put on the spot. It's rare for Glory City to roam the world, and the number of people who participate in the various competitions is even fewer. He never thought that the first time he participated in a competition, he would lose in such an unsightly manner. From now on, it's hard to guarantee that Glory City won't be left with a bad impression of fishing for fame and not living up to its name. Cha Pinchao took a deep breath and turned his head to look at the stage. With this look, he couldn't help being so angry that the veins on his forehead were about to burst. Chapter 41-48. The stage was surrounded by layers of sand scorpions. It was unknown what the little stoic had done, but Hong Shang, who was originally standing in front of her, was now flushed red from suffocation, and her body was shrinking inch by inch. Her knees made cracking sounds, and before they broke, she collapsed to the ground with a bang. Her head was firmly stuck to the ground, as if something was pressing down on it. A trace of frigid mockery flitted through Arbor's eyes, and his voice was apathetic and icy. Why are you being so courteous? Just stand up and speak. As soon as he finished speaking, he moved his finger and pulled a gravity talisman out of Hong Shang's body. Hong Shang instantly felt her body lighten, and her face turned green and red from anger. The instant she jumped up, she still wanted to charge forward and fight the little stoic. Suddenly, she heard the hosts Nuno and Duodwa's anxious cries. Royal Academy Arbor wins the free challenge competition, awarded 100 points. You're wrong. Arbor faintly interrupted that host's words and cast a chilly glance at them. It was as if they were frozen by something. The 2 hosts were tongue-tied and instantly fell into a state of silence, as if they were mutes. In the first round, Hong Shang provoked me. In the second round, Hong Shang's group of 5 provoked me together. How should these points be calculated? The 2 hosts instantly understood and said in unison without any integrity. There is a free challenge competition. Royal Academy Arbor fought 1 against 5 and won 2 rounds in a row, awarded 1,000 points. Everyone. Do you have to yield to evil forces like this? Arbor, I want to kill. Hong Shang flew into a rage out of humiliation. She clenched her fist tightly and was about to charge forward. Suddenly, she saw a moon-white figure flash and abruptly fall in front of her. Hong Shang looked up in a daze and mumbled, Your Highness. Suddenly, Emo Lien flicked her sleeve and struck her in the mouth and nose, pushing her away heavily. Hong Shang, you've been expelled from Glory City, Emo Lien said with chilly eyes. We will personally send a message to grandfather to explain this matter. Hong Shang was flabbergasted and couldn't react for a long time. When her brain finally returned to normal, she clearly understood the Crown Prince's meaning. She couldn't help but shout angrily. On what basis? Your Highness the Crown Prince. What right do you have to slap? Hong Shang's face was once again slapped across the air. Wah! Hong Shang's face was so swollen that it was unbearable to look at. His Highness the Crown Prince wasn't a soft-hearted Jojo with a stoic face. He knocked Hong Shang to the ground in 2 moves, and he couldn't get up again. Blood flowed out of his mouth. Naturally, he could no longer speak. Your Highness. Cha Pinchao could not help but clasp his hands and said, although senior apprentice Sister Hong was disrespectful in the first place, and made a small mistake, but now she has already received the punishment she deserves. She, Consecrator Cha, wants to be like Consecrator Hong? Floating? Cha Pinchao felt a chill in his heart, and immediately shut his mouth. He hadn't expected the Crown Prince to know them like the back of his hand. They had never met the Crown Prince before, but the Crown Prince knew at a glance that he was Cha Pinchao, the grandson of great Consecrator Cha. Taking a deep breath, Cha Pinchao knew that this Crown Prince wasn't someone to be trifled with. He took a step back, clasped his hands, and said, then I'll take senior apprentice Sister Hong away to treat her injuries. Hong Shang has already been expelled from Glory City. From now on, there will be no Hong Shang in Glory City's Glory Academy. At this moment, Hong Shang felt a trace of fear. Her face was filled with panic as she looked at the Crown Prince and whimpered. Chapter 41-49. The Crown Prince naturally ignored her, and only swept her a cold glance in the end, before looking at his wife with furrowed brows and lowered eyes. Jojo, are you tired? Arbor shook his small head and thought, I'm not tired. It's just that I was too annoyed by Hong Shang's entanglement earlier. Instead of fighting her properly, Hong Shang only wanted to quarrel with her. I really don't know what she's thinking. The little fellow tilted her head with a displeased expression. Why is this Hong Shang so weak? Wasn't she a second-level god apotheosis master? Her cultivation level should be the same as hers, and there shouldn't be much of a difference. But after exchanging blows, the little stoic immediately discovered that the divine power in Hong Shang's body didn't even reach 1% of hers. She was also a second-level god apotheosis master. If Arbor's power was as vast as the sea of stars, then Hong Shang might only be a small ditch. Emolian couldn't help but laugh when she heard this. She pulled the little fellow's hand and said, why do you always compare yourself with that kind of idiot? With your current cultivation, it shouldn't be a problem for you to challenge a 5th level or 6th level god apotheosis master alone. You challenged her? Arbor blinked and said in all seriousness, it was her who challenged me. She has a good eye. Emolian couldn't resist twitching her mouth, and she nodded repeatedly in amusement. Right, it was her who foolishly challenged my Jojo. How can her cultivation, which was piled up by pills, be a match for you? Arbor nodded pensively. Although pills could allow cultivators to advance quickly, if they took pills at every level and rapidly raised their cultivation level by 5 or 6 levels, then their cultivation wouldn't advance too far in the end, and would probably stop at a certain point. Sir Jojo tilted his small head at him, and whispered something to him. Emolian knitted her brows at first to express her unwillingness, but then she reluctantly nodded and squeezed his small hand. Then your husband will be below the stage, watching you from afar. You have to be good. Arbor was speechless. Wasn't she just fighting? How was she not obedient? Then, he turned around and looked at the hosts, Nyonyo and Duo, who had already eaten a stomach full of dog food, and had a somewhat hopeless expression. With a clear voice he said, set the stage. The ears of Nyonyo and Duo twitched, and their spirits were lifted. They were completely excited. At this moment, the crowd below was already cheering. Set up the arena, set up the arena. It was only the first night of the competition, yet someone had already set up an arena. One had to know that the earlier they set up the arena, the harder it would be to deal with them. After all, a person's experience was limited. If he was continuously challenged by others, it was very likely that his strength would be exhausted, and in the end, he would be taken advantage of by others. One had to know that if one could defeat the arena master, they would be able to obtain the points that the arena master had set up. If the arena master won 10 matches in a row, and was challenged off the stage in the 11th match, the challenger would be able to obtain 2,000 points. It was a considerable number. Set up the arena. Duo shouted passionately, her big eyes flashing with a strange bright luster. Heads of the aristocratic families, young masters, young mistresses, and everyone watching the competition. Hello everyone. On the first night of the Tianyuan competition, just before dawn, our royal school's student representative requests to set up the arena. Set up the arena. Duo's excited voice was trembling. Nyo, who was beside her, shouted even louder than her. That's right. Now we announce that arena number 6 has been successfully set up. Arena Master. Royal School Student Arbor. Chapter 4150. Congratulations to Student Arbor for successfully setting up the arena. The corners of eldest young Master Qin's eyes twitched. He felt that the hosts on the stage were hilarious, facing an expressionless stoic face. They could still so generously and passionately continue their speech without feeling awkward at all. Duo even pulled up Student Arbor's little hand and waved her little paw. I announce, Student Arbor, the Imperial Academy representative, the arena will begin. The little crown princess was expressionless, even though her little paw was being shaken excitedly in the air. Now we invite anyone to challenge the arena master. The arena master will get 100 points for winning a match. Winning 5 matches will get 800 points. Winning 10 matches will give 2,000 points. The higher the winning streak, the higher the points. Defeating the arena master will give you all the points after the arena master sets up the arena. The entire audience was in an uproar. Immediately, some students stood up, unable to remain calm. But very quickly, someone grabbed the arm of this hot-headed student and motioned for him to look at the pitch-black arena. Everyone's boiling hot blood seemed to have been doused with a bucket of cold water, instantly chilling their hearts. Haha, what kind of joke was this? Go up and be bitten by the sand scorpions? Now that the arena was filled with sand scorpions, whoever went up would be unlucky. Moreover, just now, even the 5 people from the Glory Academy were unable to throw Arbor off the stage. Now, him. What ability did he have to throw the Imperial Academy's arena master off the stage? Instructor He Wei from the Umbra Academy warmly and courteously congratulated Principal Yun. Student Arbor from your academy is really amazing. Principal Yun gladly accepted this compliment and was very pleased with himself. His academy's student had made such a big splash, and as the principal, he naturally felt honored. It would be strange if he wasn't pleased with himself. Take a look. Who could be like their Imperial Academy students and set up the arena before the first day had even ended? Who had the courage to set up the arena at this time? Only the Imperial Academy. Ahahaha. The Imperial Academy is mighty. The Imperial Academy will win. The group of idiots around him raised their arms and cheered, each louder than the last. Hearing this, Jiawei Academy's principal Li Xiangbei couldn't help but smile insincerely as he nodded at Yun Piaomiao. As the main force of the Academy's home ground, how could he not be angry that the Royal Academy's overall score was not even higher than the Royal Academy's? Jiawei City was his home, and the Jiawei Battle Arena had a good relationship with the Jiawei Academy. Even so, the Royal School still managed to gain the upper hand. You go up and challenge him, Li Xiangbei said in a deep voice to a man in black sitting beside him. The man immediately stood up and cupped his fists. Yes, Dean. Instructor Broadaxe couldn't help but frown and kindly remind him. Isn't this a bad idea? One had to know that the man called up by the dean was not a student of their academy. He was actually the dean's personal guard, Zhang Chunlong, who had the power of a level 3 god tier master. Although Zhang Chunlong looked young, he was actually more than 40 years old and was a speed and strength type god tier master. Green Hair had been beaten up by the Imperial Academy students at the entrance of the battle arena, and Arbor had knocked Jiang Lushui off the stage with a single move. This made Dean Li Xiangbei of the Jiawei Academy lose face. He was trying his best to regain some face. Chapter 4151. If this defending champion of the Royal School was kicked off the stage by a student from the Jiawei Academy in the first round, They would definitely become the laughing stock of this heavenly yuan competition. Thinking of this, Li Xiangbei's face revealed a sinister smile. Across the sea of heads, he clasped his hands in the direction of Yin Piaomiao and smiled. Principal Yin, your little disciple is indeed extraordinary, and the beast horde he controls is also quite impressive. But this disciple of mine from the Jiawei Academy is also not bad. Li Xiangbei laughed and said, if I accidentally hurt your girl, you won't blame me, right? I want you dead. I want you to die 100 deaths without reincarnation. A cold voice sounded from Li Xiangbei's side. Li Xiangbei's breathing became sluggish as he stiffly turned his neck to look at Prince Mo, who had a cold expression on his face. Prince Mo had seen the little girl leave the stage and had given his wife some instructions. Now that he had come down, he heard Li Xiangbei's death-seeking words. I want you dead. I want you to die 100 deaths without reincarnation. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. The people around the crown prince sat upright and still, not daring to make a sound. An extremely cold voice faintly lingered by Li Xiangbei's ears, and it was like the sound of a devil that passed through his mind. It didn't fade away for a long time, causing his entire body to instantly suffuse with strands of coldness, and his heart even trembled without end. He suddenly opened his eyes wide and looked towards the crown prince. He saw that the young man had only glanced at him coldly before retracting his gaze. However, he just sat there. Even if he did not move or speak, his aura was still very strong, making it hard for people to ignore him. Li Xiangbei took a deep breath and hurriedly comforted himself in his heart. This should be just a casual threat from the young man. It's okay, calm down. But why couldn't he calm down? Li Xiangbei could not help but want to stand up, but was pulled back by the teacher beside him. On the other side, the beautiful teacher from the Jiawei Academy also hurriedly smiled and tried to smooth things over. Principal Yin, our Principal Li is just joking with you. Principal Yin snorted in disdain and turned his head away arrogantly. Who's joking with you? Who's joking with your ancestors? Our royal school's Sir Jojo will not lose. Bah. Why are they calling me Mr. Jojo Yin Piaomiao? Couldn't be bothered to pay attention to Li Xiangbei, and turned her head to look at the arena. At this moment, the black-clothed man from the Jiawei Academy was already standing in the arena in front of the young crown princess. He cupped his hands and said coldly, Zhang Chunlong of Jiawei Academy, please enlighten me. As he spoke, he pulled out a pitch-black whip from his waist. With a crackling sound, it swept through the air. The shadow of the whip was like a snake as it lashed towards Arbor's wrist. Xiao Mu calmed herself down and coldly observed him from the sidelines. She saw that the whip was already in front of her, but it was blocked with a paw sound. Around the little guy's body, jade talismans appeared out of thin air. The talisman power flowed, and the jade white light flickered. It was very eye-catching. Everyone couldn't help but gasp. Whoa! It was really a layman watching a show. They had no idea what was going on inside. It turned out that when the little girl had set up the arena, she had already put on a defensive formation, using invisibility talismans, and quickly set it up around her. Chapter 4152. This Zhang Chunlong was also a swift and decisive person. He immediately attacked the little lady without even saying a single word. He wanted to use a trick to catch the little stoic off guard. However, he didn't expect that the little stoic had long been on guard. Her pair of icy bead-like eyes were currently staring unblinkingly at the person in front of her, a chilly glint in her eyes. Crack! A green whip turned into a streak of dark light, and whipped directly in Zhang Chunlong's direction. The speed was so fast that even Zhang Chunlong couldn't help but be surprised. With a spin of his body, he rapidly retreated a few steps to the outside and steadily landed on the ground with a bewildered expression. Wow! This time, everyone couldn't sit still, and they all started whispering to each other in loud voices. It's a talisman matrix. The little crown princess really is a great talisman practitioner. I've never seen a great talisman practitioner fight in public before. So awesome. I've really broadened my horizons today. Arbor naturally turned a deaf ear to the excited shouts around him. Yet he heard two especially excited voices coming from behind him. Duo and Ñoño fearlessly rushed onto the sixth arena where they were fighting. Holding a loudspeaker, they used an extremely excited and passionate voice to chirp. Friends, young masters, young misses and spectators. Everyone has seen it, right? A talisman practitioner. This student representative from the Royal Academy is a talisman practitioner. She set up a concealment defensive talisman matrix long before she set up the arena. Wow, so awesome, isn't it? Everyone look. This old classmate from Joey Academy already has a displeased expression on his face. Evidently, his sneak attack failed, and he ended up pecking at the rice instead. Too exciting, truly too exciting. I feel that without a doubt, the great talisman practitioner is bound to win this match. They blabbered on and on about the little stoic, trampling Joey Academy's Zhang Chunlong into the depths of the dust without the slightest scruple. Everyone was speechless as they looked at the two fearless hosts. You guys are truly brave warriors. Aren't you worried that you'll be directly killed by Joey Academy's people after exiting this arena after the match? You talk too much. Zhang Chunlong's face darkened. He swung his whip and sent the two hosts flying. The moment Duo Ñoño flew out hand in hand, she didn't forget to exclaim in a very competent manner, "Everyone, don't worry, we'll be back soon." Everyone was speechless as they looked up at the sky. They always felt that the Holy Best Battle Arena had invited these two amusing hosts from who knows where. They were simply here to be funny. A cold smile hung on Zhang Chunlong's face. Little girl, you're quite good at using a whip, and you're also quite good at using talismans. However, those who are too proud will always be defeated by their pride. Look, your sand scorpions have no effect on me. Zhang Chunlong took a step forward, and Arbor saw the sand scorpions retreat a few steps. The little girl glanced at Zhang Chunlong with interest. A poison master with a special ability? She saw the black smoke rising from his feet, and immediately knew that he had a special ability. Along the way, he used the poison power under his feet to force the sand scorpions to retreat step by step. Arbor's eyes couldn't help but brighten. She swung her hand and raised a storage talisman, once again storing the sand scorpions into the talisman. She then glanced at that poison master and raised her hand with a whoosh, sprinkling out poison. Chapter 4153. That's great. She finally had a test subject for the poison that she had previously developed. This poison master was simply the best candidate to test her current poison. As long as her poison was more powerful than the poison that had spread throughout his body, it would be able to seep into his skin, flesh, blood, and meridians, causing him great discomfort. If it didn't work on him, then it naturally meant that her poison was useless against him. A level 3 god tier master and a poison master. He was the most suitable person to test for poison. There was probably no one else in the world who was more suitable than him. Ming Ya sat below the arena, a few people away, in the same row as Prince Mo. At this moment, he could clearly see the flickering flames in the little girl's eyes, and his heart couldn't help but tremble slightly. Looking up at the man in black on the arena, he seemed to have thought of something, and the corners of his mouth were tightly pursed into a straight line. The poison powder that rose into the air was immediately sprinkled on Zhang Chunlong's body, as if it didn't cost any money. It wasn't until Arbor sprinkled the third handful of powder that Zhang Chunlong couldn't help but tremble violently, staggering back a few steps. Zhang Chunlong was actually forced to spit out a mouthful of poisoned blood. The expression of Li Xiangbei of the Joey Academy abruptly changed. He pressed down on the armrest of the chair with one hand and raised his body slightly. His entire body was taut, and he looked like he was ready to attack at any moment. Principal Yun swept a glance at him and chuckled. I'm really sorry. I didn't expect this old classmate of yours to be so weak even though he looks powerful. Who was he trying to fool? This Li Xiangbei had some eyesight. Who couldn't tell that Zhang Chunlong wasn't a student of the Joey Academy at all? Zhang Chunlong was Principal Li's personal guard. And it wasn't strange at all that his cultivation had reached the level of a level 3 god tier master. After all, Zhang Chunlong was someone who'd had many fortuitous encounters in his early years. After joining the Joey Academy, he was greatly appreciated by Principal Li, and the usual cultivation resources were naturally given to him. Li Xiangbei raised his eyelids slightly, and his line of sight turned to Emolian, who was sitting to the side. Seeing him glance over coldly with a bone-chilling expression, he could only suppress the anger in his belly as quickly as possible. He was extremely confident in Zhang Chunlong. Zhang Chunlong would not easily lose to this little girl in front of him. If Zhang Chunlong were to be struck off the stage by the stoic face now, then Jiawei Academy would truly lose all face. After all, green hair, Jiang Lushui, and Zhang Chunlong were enough to prove that the Jiawei Academy was nothing but trash in front of the imperial school. On the stage, Xiaomu carefully observed Zhang Chunlong's reaction and nodded imperceptibly. Zhang Chunlong's poison resistance was indeed not bad. The powder that she sprinkled was one of a kind in the world. It was extremely cold and poisonous. The fact that Zhang Chunlong was able to hold on until now, and his body was only slightly swaying, showed that he had some strength. Unfortunately, Arbor flicked out a palm-sized thing with complete petals and fangs. He quickly dug into his inner world with one hand and waved out another cloud of golden sand powder. This was the world's most corrosive poison sand powder, made from the combination of the blue spirit snake emperor, the man-eating flower, and the golden saint poisonous flower. It drifted out with the wind. As if it had a mind of its own, it converged into a golden silk satin that swirled and swayed around Zhang Chunlong, whose expression had changed greatly. After the little man-eating flower touched the ground, it immediately swelled in the wind, and its body expanded 100 times. Chapter 4154. It abruptly revealed its malevolent fangs, contrasting with the opening and closing of its enormous petals. At first glance, it made one's hair stand on end. Splat! It sprayed a mouthful of green venom at Zhang Chunlong without the slightest hesitation. Zhang Chunlong's expression abruptly changed, and he forced himself to move back several steps. When he raised his hand, he saw a pitch-black, large toad covered in lumps with pus oozing out of every lump. It jumped onto the stage with a plop. The little stoic immediately retreated several steps in succession, her small face taut. Although her adorable small face was expressionless, everyone could see the clear disdain in her small eyes. Disgusting, dirty, smelly, shameless. The little stoic immediately leaped into the air and stared vigilantly at the poisonous toad below. The man-eating flower, however, looked extremely elated. It swayed each of its large scarlet petals and extended its fangs wantonly. This fellow promptly threw down the main character, Zhang Chunlong, and directly twisted its trembling body, pouncing in the toad's direction with a whoosh. Thus, everyone saw a bizarre scene. A giant man-eating flower chased after the toad relentlessly. From time to time, it would spit out a mouthful of green venom. It was constantly trying to melt the poisonous toad. Seeing that the man-eating flower wasn't doing anything serious, the little stoic knitted her brows and took out the blue spirit snake emperor with a flip of her hand. Go suck his blood. The little stoic patted the little blue snake's head with an instructive expression. Don't throw away the watermelon after picking up sesame seeds. That person's blood is the strongest poison. You can do it. Hiss. The little blue snake immediately scuttled excitedly, and its tiny body abruptly turned into an enormous figure several meters long and wide in the air. With a hiss, it opened its enormous mouth and directly bit at Zhang Chunlong's leg. The spectators numbly looked at the little stoic floating in the air. This little crown princess. Not only did she summon so many poisonous scorpions earlier, she also summoned an Arabian man-eating flower and a large snake now. They could be considered to have understood her combat prowess. Whoever went up would be unlucky, right? Fortunately, they had Zhang Chunlong, this old classmate, who stepped onto the stage first and helped them experience the little stoic's brilliant moves. It would also prevent them from stepping on a minefield again. Thank goodness, thank goodness. Although he was unlucky to have the little stoic, this oddball, as his competitor. But compared to Zhang Chunlong's misfortune, everyone felt that they might not be the unluckiest. Zhang Chunlong forcefully raised his chi and flew up. His body spun half a circle in the air. However, he suddenly felt his feet sink. When he looked down, he couldn't help but cry out in his heart. he saw that the huge blue snake's tail had already wrapped around his legs. At this moment, it exerted force and his whole body suddenly fell down. Just as Zhang Chunlong's circled divine power was about to smash down, the little stoic threw out an attack talisman from the side. The power of the talisman collided with his palm and directly caused the divine power he released to suddenly collapse. Zhang Chunlong clenched his fists as a deep fear flashed through his eyes. Just as he was about to turn his head to look at the stoic face, he suddenly felt a pain in his leg. His entire body immediately turned cold as he felt the snake's fangs burrowing into his skin. His blood flowed out uncontrollably like a continuous stream. This huge blue snake, it sucked blood. Zhang Chunlong's entire body involuntarily trembled as a chill spread from the tip of his heart. Arbor stood in the air and coldly gazed at Zhang Chunlong, who had fallen onto the stage and was tightly wrapped around by the snake's tail. Chapter 4155. A pained expression appeared on his face. He felt as if his legs were about to be minced by the snake's tail, and his entire body ached incessantly. Zhang Chunlong let out a pained howl. He glared at Arbor and coldly shouted, "Do you think the poisonous blood in my body is that easy to suck?" When Li Xiangbei from Jiawei Academy saw that his capable retainer was defeated by the little stoic, indignation naturally shot out from his eyes. Li Xiangbei abruptly clapped his hands and stood up from his seat. He shouted, "Chunlong, admit defeat." If he didn't admit defeat now, his blood would probably be sucked dry by that huge snake. This despicable Royal Academy actually allowed a student who could control many spirit beasts to participate in the competition. There were so many sand scorpions, man-eating flowers, and huge blue snakes. They clearly wanted to gang up on the other competitors, right? If Sir Jojo heard Headmaster Li's thoughts right now, he would definitely snort disdainfully at him. If it were you, would you gang up on them? I already said that there aren't any rules in the competition. You're free to leave the stage and rely on your own abilities. If you lose, you can only blame yourselves for being weak and weak. Suddenly, the blue spirit snake emperor shook off Zhang Chunlong and hissed as it rolled around and continuously shrunk its body. Zhang Chunlong revealed a scornful sneer. I already said that my blood isn't that easy to suck. Right now, his complexion was slightly pale, probably due to excessive blood loss. When he saw the little stoic's cold and severe eyes sweep over, his heart abruptly shuddered, and he inexplicably felt a chill. He opened his mouth and shouted, "This humble one admits defeat." However, just as he opened his mouth to admit defeat, the man-eating flower tore off half of that huge toad's leg. Immediately, the poison inside that toad's body flowed out with a splash, and its aura instantly withered. "Stop!" Zhang Chunlong's pupils contracted, and he shouted sternly, "This humble one has already admitted defeat. You can't." Arbor floated to the ground and beckoned with his hand. The man-eating flower shrank with each step and returned to the size of a palm when it hopped in front of Arbor. Now that it had swallowed the toad's poison, its crimson petals were as magnificent as blood. Several serrated fangs drilled out of the petals and shook their heads at Arbor to flatter him. Arbor took it back and lowered his head to pick up the little blue snake from the ground. The little blue snake's belly was bulging, as if it had sucked Zhang Chunlong's blood. It lay on Arbor's palm like a corpse rolling back and forth. Its eyes looked at its little master pitifully, as if it had eaten too much and was begging for attention. Arbor glanced at it with a stoic expression. It raised its hand and pressed down on its bulging belly. The little blue snake immediately showed a pitiful expression of, "I'm so pitiful. I want to die." "No, master, I'm about to die." And its body kept rolling around in her hands. Rolling around, rolling around. Arbor expressionlessly took out a pill and stuffed it into its mouth. He raised his hand and took back the gluttonous creature. The poison in Zhang Chunlong's body was indeed formidable. Even with the blue spirit snake emperor's poison physique, she was still suffering from abdominal pain. After drinking so much of his poisonous blood, it had to be said that this damned Zhang Chunlong really did have some skills. On the other hand, Zhang Chunlong's heart was filled with fear. He glanced at the poisonous toad and saw that half of its leg had been torn off by the man-eating flower. It was now limping in front of him. Both the master and the human were severely injured. The poisonous toad had just jumped in front of him when it lay on the ground on its last breath. Chapter 4156. The fate of this master and beast duo was full of misfortune. They both injured a leg and had a lot of their poisonous blood sucked out. At this time, the symptoms of Zhang Chunlong's excessive blood loss manifested. At the same time that his mind was in a daze, he felt his vision darken. Principal Li's face darkened, and he hastily had 2 Jiwei Academy students support Zhang Chunlong down. The poisonous toad, which had lost half of its leg and had fainted due to blood loss, was also carried off the stage. Li Xiangbei faced Yin Piaomiao's direction and harumphed heavily with a flick of his sleeve. He then sat back down with a very unsightly expression. They had truly thrown away all of Jiwei Academy's reputation. A gloomy expression hung on Li Xiangbei's face, and his breathing was exceptionally gloomy. Even as he sat there, he continuously emitted a low pressure. Meanwhile, on Arbor's side, after seeing everyone swiftly get Zhang Chunlong and the poisonous toad off the stage, he casually found a relatively clean place and sat down cross-legged, closing his eyes to regulate his breathing. Duo Nyonyo's incomparably excited cries entered his ears. Distinguished young masters and misses, friends and spectators. After an intense defending match, our arena master, Imperial Academy student Arbor, will obtain 100 points for his first challenge. Next, if anyone wants to challenge the arena master, they can directly go up the stage or raise their hand to express their desire to challenge us. As soon as she finished speaking, the crowd below fell silent, as if Duo Nyonyo's impassioned speech was merely playing the lute to a cow. The crowd of cultivators below the stage lowered their heads, as if treating Nyonyo Duo as non-existent. The 2 hosts looked at each other in dismay. In the end, it was still Duo who spoke. Friends, if no one else goes up the stage to challenge us, then we will continue with the lot drawing ranking competition. From now on, if no one comes up to challenge us, our arena master will automatically obtain 100 points every 2 hours until the end of the competition. She will also obtain an additional reward from the arena master, a grand prize of 10,000 points. Everyone. In other words, regardless of whether or not no one came up to challenge us, the little stoic could automatically obtain 100 points as a reward just by sitting there for 2 hours. This made the other friends who were fighting in full swing in the ring suddenly feel their balls ache. They were fighting to the death here. But in the end, other people just had to sit cross-legged on the 6th arena and close their eyes to rest and recuperate, and they could actually automatically obtain points. If this wasn't cheating, then what was? Qi Xianxian couldn't help but slap her thigh and laugh out loud. Their little stoic was seriously too amusing. It felt like just by sitting there, doing nothing with a straight face, it gave people a feeling of happiness. Ha 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 ha. While Qi Xianxian was laughing, she suddenly saw her name appear on top of the 4th arena. She could only stop smiling, stand up, and leap into the ring to begin her own match. After Qi Xianxian finished fighting and returned triumphantly, little Fatty took out a small fan from his inner world and waved it beside his wife. Xianxian, do you think they still dare to go up and challenge Qiao Qiao? By now, a new batch of people had already gone up to the 1st to 5th arenas. Only Sir Jojo on the 6th arena sat there motionlessly, as if he was asleep and didn't even bother to move his eyelids. At this time, a clear voice was heard from the 3rd arena. I'm setting up the arena. Chapter 4157. Everyone instantly looked in astonishment at the man who set up the ring on stage number 3. Who is it? The little fatty asked curiously. Beside him, Lu Yu turned around and said, This person seems to be a student from Sangzhou's Huiyu Academy. Then they heard the host, Nyonyo, exclaim excitedly, That's great, students. Another person dares fearfully to die. Come up to set up a ring. I announce that this Huiyu Academy student Qi Yinan has successfully set up a ring. Suddenly, there was an uproar from below. Qi Yinan stood with her hands behind her back and took out several dozen blue talisman papers from her inner world. She threw them out in passing and rapidly formed a defensive formation. Before Duo and Nuno could finish their series of excited shouts, they heard the sound of a gust of wind, and a blue-clothed woman stood on the stage with a smile. "I would like to seek guidance from young Master Qi." This woman smiled without batting an eyelid. Without another word, she summoned a spirit sword from her conscious. With a flick of her finger, the spirit sword flew in Qi Yinan's direction. The little stoic finally lifted her eyelids in boredom. Her pair of cold and desolate eyes stared unblinkingly at the two people fighting in full swing on stage number 3. This Qi Yinan should be a member of Zhangzhou's talisman patrician family. Her use of talismans was rather standard, but some of the talismans she drew she truly couldn't bear to look straight at them. Shoddy skills and an unbearably vulgar knockoff instantly assaulted her senses. Indeed, she couldn't help but frown slightly. On the third arena, Qi Yinan, who had been challenged several times in succession, was gasping for breath and had difficulty breathing. Truly, different people had different fates. He was also a ring guardian. On his side, people were constantly coming up to challenge him, while the little stoic crown princess's stage number 6 was completely deserted. No, it was even more desolate than being completely deserted. No one paid any attention to the stoic student on stage number 6 at all, allowing her to regulate her breathing, meditate, and count mushrooms. After 4 hours, no one actually went up to challenge her, allowing this stoic student to pick up 200 points for nothing. On the other hand, Qi Yinan was somewhat powerless at stage number 3. After all, after being challenged no less than 5 times in a row, no one would be able to withstand it. Qi Yinan hurriedly raised her hand and requested to use the ring master's privilege to rest for 15 minutes. He needed to make full use of these precious 15 minutes. After setting up 2 defensive arrays around her, Qi Yinan hastily entered a state of cultivation, anxious to recover. The ring master's expedient waiver can only be used 3 times a day, and each use lasts for 15 minutes. Qi Yinan was very clear that he was in a very dangerous situation. The problem now was that the 3rd and 6th rings were also set up, but he was beaten like a dog, while the other one was so bored that he kept counting mushrooms. Qi Yinan took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the fluctuating emotions in her heart. She ordered herself to enter a state of cultivation as soon as possible. Look quickly, what is the young crown prince consort doing? The little crown princess took out a small cauldron from her conscious. The small cauldron expanded with the wind and instantly became as tall as a person. The little stoic turned her head to glance at them, and directly flipped the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron over. She dove into the cauldron, and there was a loud rumble. Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't help but twitch his mouth. TSK, the little stoic went to sleep. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, and simultaneously revealed a speechless expression. Chapter 4158. It couldn't be helped. She had already waited for more than 4 hours, yet no one was willing to challenge her. Could it be that she had to keep her eyes open and count mushrooms until dawn? Haha, it was seriously too boring. Since no one challenged her, then she would go catch up on sleep. It was simply a waste of her excited anticipation to pass her days in such a boring manner. The little fatty couldn't resist sneaking a glance at Prince Mo beside him, only to see the latter's lips curled into a smile as his gaze circled that 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron. His Highness probably felt that the little stoic's actions were extremely amusing. The little fatty inwardly ridiculed and rolled his eyes. Little did he know that the little stoic's actions were simply drawing hatred everywhere. At this moment, which academy disciple currently competing on the stage didn't gnash their teeth in hatred at the stoic face? She truly was a shameless little stoic. While others were fighting for their lives, she hid inside that cauldron and continued to slack off. The problem was that she could earn points automatically, just by meditating on the spot. The points she earned in a day weren't the slightest bit inferior to others who diligently fought 10 matches in a row. How could they endure this? The little fatty, and the others were actually well aware that the little girl wouldn't really seal herself inside that 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron. She must have returned to Paradise Planet. Not only was the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron's defense extremely strong, it could also effectively isolate everyone's divine senses from infiltrating it. No matter how strong you were, all you would see after infiltrating the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron with divine senses was pitch black. It didn't matter to the little stoic that she returned to Paradise Planet to sleep and eat with peace of mind. Casually tossing a demonic eye outside the arena would allow her to clearly grasp all the movements in the arena outside. Sir Jojo was actually already tired after tossing and turning for a day and night. After washing up and returning to her treehouse, Miss Chow hugged her pillow and quickly fell asleep comfortably. After she slept enough and got up, she ate some food and drank some spirit tea, feeling 100 times more energetic. Only then did the little girl appear inside the 9 stars, mirroring the moon cauldron, with great satisfaction. Just as she was about to open the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron, she heard the muffled sound of a heavy punch above her head. Student Xiaoming from Umbra Academy challenges Arena number 6. Student Arbor from the Royal School. Nyonya Duo shouted excitedly. Even through the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron, Arbor could hear the loud applause outside. Many students from other academies were moved to tears when they saw that someone finally dared to challenge Arbor. That's great. Finally, someone fearlessly stepped onto the arena to challenge the young crown princess. Arbor lifted the red copper cauldron and waved his hand, summoning the cauldron back into his consciousness. Emolien looked at the little fellow's spirited face and swept away his previous weariness. She couldn't help but curl her lips into a smile. Only they knew that it had only been less than 2 hours since Jojo had released the cauldron. However, Lady Qiao Qiao should have already finished eating, washing up, and catching up on sleep. This troublesome child was now full of energy. How could he be the same as these cultivators who had been fighting nonstop for a day and a night? The little stoic washed her white academy uniform, dried it, and put it back on. She naturally wouldn't be so stupid as to change her clothes midway. Wouldn't this seem even more strange? Student Xiaoming from Umbra Academy, start the challenge. After Nuno screeched excitedly, the tall man named Xiaoming fiercely stomped the ground and charged toward her. Chapter 4159. When the little stoic saw this person summon a long saber and slash at her without a second word, her mood immediately brightened up. What a good man. It was a fight, so it should be straightforward like this and not waste words. This Xiaoming from Umbra Academy had a squarish face, and his attacks were swift and accurate. The spirit weapon in his hand was a broad saber that was 7 feet long. He brandished it in his hand, stirring up fierce gales that pounced at her. Arbor abruptly flashed, and was already in front of Xiaoming. The startled swan dagger abruptly leaped out of her conscious, and stabbed at the broad saber, with a whoosh as swift as a clap of thunder. Clang, 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 clang. The broad saber and the short, agile dagger clashed several times, stirring up the nearby air to fluctuate incessantly. Whoosh! A beam of flame shot over, but it was deflected by Arbor's snow-colored silver needles with a flip of her hand. Those silver needles were forged from ice and snow, so they were naturally the little girl's water spirit power. She had fused with sacred wood, sacred water, and sacred earth for a long time, and now she could use them with a flip of her hand and do as she pleased. She didn't need to waste any effort to figure out what she wanted them to transform into, and simply raised her hand. Several soft chi-chi-chi sounds were heard as the snow-refined silver needles abruptly shot toward Xiaoming's face, after being lightly deflected by Arbor's slender hand. Xiaoming's expression didn't change, and he waved his hand to set up a partial defensive fire helmet in front of him. It blocked the attack of several silver needles. However, in the blink of an eye, several hundred snow-refined silver needles once again flew out simultaneously. This time, they split into 3 paths and rushed toward Xiaoming. Xiaoming promptly activated his defensive spirit weapon and erected a defensive wall in front of him. He heard a series of soft thuds. Countless snow-refined silver needles directly penetrated the defensive wall and shot toward his limbs and bones. Xiaoming didn't panic and immediately leaped down. His figure flipped back and forth in midair as he continuously struck out clusters of flames. Following a series of clanging sounds, countless snow-refined silver needles were rapidly sent flying by him. In the end, It had to be said that the shock in his heart spread even more. Was the little stoic casually unleashing an attack, without expending any divine power at all? Although the two of them had not been fighting for a long time, the intensity of the battle was extremely high. Basically, they didn't stop, moving back and forth, competing with their own divine power. His fire spirit was completely unable to suppress his opponent's water spirit. Even before this, everyone knew that the little stoic was actually someone who possessed two types of spirit energy sources. The water spirit and the wood spirit seemed to be very powerful. So powerful that no one could tell what level they were. Xiaoming took a deep breath, thinking that it must be above the 8th level. Then, could it be the 9th level spirit water? Chi. After a light sound, Xiaoming suddenly felt a pain in his shoulder. Lowering his head to take a look, he saw a snow-refined silver needle, made of water spirit piercing through his shoulder. The subtle but itchy feeling of being pricked by needles instantly numbed half of his arm. Hiss! Xiaoming sucked in a breath of cold air. He thought to himself, this girl's methods are truly terrifying. She can actually integrate some unknown poison into her own water spirit? If it was purely a water spirit's attack, it would at most hurt. Why would it produce such a strange itchy feeling? Soon Xiaoming's arm drooped down. However, his speed wasn't the slightest bit slow. He leaped into the air with a few leaps and punched down. Arbor's expression didn't change in the slightest. He waved his hand, and a wisp of fine yellow sand covered the sky and rolled up. Chapter 4160. The boundless yellow sand rapidly transformed into a giant rock and blocked Xiaoming's punch. Xiaoming's attack landed on the giant rock, but it didn't even leave a dent on it. His pupils constricted as a huge force hit him in the face and sent him flying half a meter away. His feet dragged out 2 white marks on the ground as he barely managed to stabilize his body. A sweet and fishy taste surged up his throat. He tried many times but failed to suppress it, and a wisp of blood flowed down the corner of his mouth. It was obvious that his meridians were injured. Both inside and outside the arena were dead silent. Everyone looked at the little girl in front of them, as if they were looking at a little monster. Earth Spirit? MHM. It turned out that this stoic face didn't only control 2 types of spirit energy. This Earth Spirit, Water Spirit, and Wood Spirit. She actually controlled 3 out of the 5 spirits? Xiaoming took a deep breath and cupped his hands slightly. He took a step back and said, Your Excellency's skills are impressive. This one admits defeat wholeheartedly. Arbor blinked and looked at Xiaoming from Shadow Academy. He nodded and gestured for him to do as he pleased. This punk was a straightforward person and straightforwardly admitted his loss. This made the little stoic feel that this punk's character wasn't bad. The little fellow hated people who acted coy and pretentious the most. After losing, they acted as if the whole world had let them down and insisted on nagging her. It was simply annoying. Meanwhile, over at Shadow Academy, the atmosphere was very gloomy. Zhao Yi, who was sitting next to Mu Xiaoxue, sneered with a cold face. Look at how impressive the second city lord's disciple is. Nothing much has happened yet, but he's already admitted defeat. Mu Xiaoxue was staring at the stage without blinking. After a while, she let out a long sigh and said in a very gentle voice, This crown princess is truly impressive. No wonder, last time in the Phoenixwood Forest, senior brother Gu also suffered such a big loss in her hands. A trace of mockery flitted through Zhao Yi's eyes. He turned around and glanced at the pretentious Gu Yishuan, sitting next to junior sister Xiao Shui in disgust. This Gu Yishuan came to the City of Shadows to become a disciple with bad intentions. Because of junior sister Xiao Shui's help, he was actually accepted as a disciple by Master. During this period of time, he had actually made a name for himself in the City of Shadows as a newcomer. Moreover, for this person, Master had specially made a trip to Medicine King Island to ask for medicine to treat external injuries. Thinking of this, Zhao Yi's eyes once again flashed with a haze, and his expression was extremely gloomy. Why would junior sister Xiao Shui fancy such a trash? How many level 10 soul masters were there in the City of Shadows? Why would junior sister look at this brat in a different light? The Gu family was not one of the top aristocratic families in Dragon Flame City. At best, It could only be considered a second-class aristocratic family. In front of the City of Shadows, their forces were no more than ants. Mu Xiaoshua's lips curled into a faint smile. Her eyes seemed to glow with 5 different colors filled with longing. Senior Marshal Brother Zhao, that crown princess is really amazing. Even Senior Brother Qiu is no match for her. Why should Xiao Shui worship such a rude and unreasonable woman? Zhao Yi snorted disdainfully. A woman should be like junior sister Xiao Shui, elegant and gentle. What's wrong with fighting and killing all day long? Lin Juner, who was sitting next to Zhao Yi, could not help but stiffen. Mu Xiaoxue hurriedly pulled Zhao Yi's sleeve and said softly, Senior Marshal Brother Zhao, don't say that. Chapter 4161. It would be great if Xiaoxue could activate her mystic meridians. She heaved a long sigh as her eyes wandered. It's a pity that Xiaoxue is useless. Zhao Yi hurriedly comforted her in a gentle voice, while Gu Yishuan turned to smile at Mu Xiaoxue and said, Junior sister, there is no need to belittle yourself. Although junior sister does not have a cultivation base, she is an expert in the art of mechanisms and is familiar with all kinds of array formations. In terms of studying ancient books, you can firmly surpass others. Indeed. Gu Yishuan nodded with a smile. Zhao Yi glanced at him. Although Gu Yishuan nodded in agreement, Zhao Yi still felt uncomfortable in his heart. Knitting his brows, his gaze suddenly shifted downwards. Has junior brother Gu's leg injury really healed? Many thanks for senior brother's concern. Gu Yishuan smiled faintly, revealing the demeanor of a gentle young master. Fortunately, Master went to Medicine King Valley to ask for medicine for me. Gu Yishuan smiled. Otherwise, my injury wouldn't have healed so quickly. Zhao Yi made a sound of agreement as a trace of mockery surfaced in his eyes. Gu Yishuan was caught in the Phoenix Wood Forest's array formation and was scratched by the skeletal arm. Unexpectedly, 5 thin black fingerprints were left behind. He had been poisoned by the rotting corpse. No wonder he had set his eyes on his junior sister. If it wasn't for his desire to enter the City of Shadows, Gu Yishuan would have died long ago. Thinking of this, Zhao Yi turned to sneered at Gu Yishuan. Junior brother Gu, you've been in our City of Shadows for quite some time. How about it? Do you want to fight in the arena? Fight for our Shadow Academy's glory. Zhao Yi said with a fake smile. Gu Yishuan didn't panic at all. He only looked up at Zhao Yi and said with a smile, Senior brother Zhao must be joking. I admit that my strength is inferior to senior brother Qiu's. Even senior brother Qiu was defeated. How can I defeat that stoic-faced crown princess? He said this, but there was nothing to be embarrassed about. After all, Qiu Ming's cultivation was indeed much higher than his. Even Qiu Ming had been defeated by the little stoic. So why should he Gu Yishuan stupidly go up and invite humiliation? Hearing this, Mu Xiaoxue also smiled and said, Senior brother Zhao, don't make things difficult for senior brother Gu. Senior apprentice brother Gu is new here, so there are many things you don't know. Mu Xiaoxue's gentle and considerate consolation drew a grateful look from Gu Yishuan. He only felt that the Miss Xiao Shui in front of him had an elegant appearance and a very gentle and generous personality. Compared to the little stoic who would make fun of people at the slightest disagreement, they were truly people from a completely different world. How could a terrifying woman like the little stoic girl compare to a strand of his junior sister Xiao Shui's hair? The more he looked at Miss Mo, the more unbearable his heart palpitated. His decision to seek refuge in the City of Shadows, due to the corpse poison on his ankle, was indeed the best decision he had ever made in his life. Gu Yishuan smiled and nodded at Mu Xiaoxue. When she turned her gaze back to the arena, she happened to see Qiu Ming slowly walking over to the Shadow Academy area. As soon as Qiu Ming appeared, several Shadow Academy students couldn't resist glancing at him, and there was no lack of mocking and ridiculing words among them. Qiu Ming ignored all of them and calmly returned to his seat. And at this time, the little stoic on the arena had quieted down again. She sat cross-legged in the center of arena number 6 and expressionlessly watched the fight on the opposite arena. That's right, it was Qi Yinan on arena number 3. This punk was almost at his limit. Chapter 4162. The pitiful brat lasted for less than 2 hours, and was about to be killed by the continuous spinning. Sure enough, different people had different fates. Arbor sat there, and looked at the unlucky brat on arena number 3, with a melon-eating face. Suddenly, her small hand moved, and everyone watched speechlessly as this guy fished out a bag of candied melon seeds from his inner world. She sat there cross-legged, and didn't need to recover at all. She just hugged a bag of snacks, and ate them with relish while watching the intense fight on the arena. When she was thirsty from eating snacks, she took out a bamboo tube filled with spirit tea and drank a mouthful. Her black, beady eyes moved nimbly back and forth between the two people fighting to the death on arena number 3. Nan reached out to feel for the talisman in his sleeve, but he seemed to have touched nothing, and his entire body stiffened for 3 seconds. And at this time, his opponent pounced on him and slapped Nan's chest. Nan seemed to have suffered a serious injury, and a trace of blood gushed out of his mouth with a poof. His opponent's eyes became increasingly bright like stars. Presumably, he thought that Nan was about to run out of luck. He wouldn't be able to withstand his attacks very soon. Just as he leaped up and abruptly charged in Nan's direction, Nan suddenly raised his right hand, and an explosion talisman landed on his opponent's face with a bang. After a thunderous boom, Nan's opponent clutched his face and howled miserably and tragically. His entire body fell to the ground and rolled back and forth on the arena. Nan stared at his defeated opponent with a sneer on his face, as he proudly stood on the arena. The originally heroic youth had a high-spirited appearance. He had won in adversity, fought together for so long, and was still able to single-handedly turn the tide. If this got out, it would naturally be a beautiful story. But for some reason, when he glanced at the little stoic eating while expressionlessly watching his show, Nan felt his balls ache for no reason. Why the hell did he have an impulse to violently beat up the stoic face in the depths of his heart? What was going on with her being so calm and unruffled, eating and watching the show? They were both defending the arena. As the champion, why did he look so much more miserable than her? How could this be? Zhao Yi from the Dark Shadow Academy challenges the champion of arena number 3, Nan. As the voice fell, Zhao Yi's figure flashed past the crowd's eyes and steadily jumped onto the third ring. Nan's expression changed completely. I request to use the ring master's immunity expedient. I'm sorry, student Nan. You've already used up your 3 chances of exemption. Nan's face immediately turned ashen. Damn it. This man from the Shadow Academy called Zhao Yi. He was actually so shameless. He was waiting for the moment when his body was on the verge of collapse to rush up and fight with him. The little stoic suddenly raised her small hand, specially supplied with a bottle of spirit recovery medicinal liquid. After drinking 1 bottle, he would be able to recover 100% of his spiritual power. 2 million spirit coins per bottle. Do you want it? Everyone's heart, which had been calm when they saw her, was suddenly filled with a huge wave of emotions. All of them were cursing in their hearts, yet Nan immediately nodded, and said without a trace of hesitation, I'll buy it. He was freaking going all out. Although he didn't know if this specially supplied spirit recovery medicinal liquid was as effective as the little stoic said. But outside, I found a lousy computer to write on until my hands hurt, #. I'll make up 2 chapters tomorrow. Chapter 4163. But in any case, there was at least some hope, right? Moreover, he had only lost once. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the little crown princess probably wouldn't deceive him. Let's gamble. Nan waved his hand. With a swish, he casually threw over a small brocade pouch filled with spirit coins. The little stoic grabbed that pouch of spirit coins, and then tossed him a bottle of spirit-restoring medicinal liquid. Nan gripped the spirit-restoring medicinal liquid tightly, and uncorked the bottle without hesitation, draining it in 1 gulp. Everyone, what kind of situation was this? Why did they feel like this scene had become a bit dramatic? The champion of arena number 6 threw a bottle of spirit-restoring medicinal liquid to the champion of arena number 3. They had a common enemy. Shadow Academy's Zhao Yi's face was filled with cold fury, A mocking smirk even surfaced on his lips. What kind of spirit-restoring medicinal liquid could fully recover all of one's spiritual energy? Even if it was a godly spirit-restoring medicinal liquid, it still required time to regulate and recover, right? That was why this girl was simply indulging in wild fantasies and telling lies. Arbor simply ignored the disdain in Zhao Yi's eyes. Ignorant and ill-informed people always lived in their own world, always thinking that what they couldn't do, others definitely couldn't either. There was naturally nothing to say to such people. Zhao Yi retracted his gaze, and his cold gaze landed on Qi Nan. This Zhangzhou talisman patrician family's main disciple was said to be second only to the Qi family's 8th young master. Even if his cultivation wasn't the most outstanding, ordinary people simply couldn't do anything to him when paired with his yellow-level talisman practitioner combat strength. However, mockery flitted across Zhao Yi's eyes. How could an arrow at the end of its flight defeat him, Zhao Yi? Zhao Yi swiftly pulled out a gray iron sword and slashed it at Qi Nan without a second word. What kind of joke was this? How could he give Qi Nan the time to consume spirit medicine and slowly recover? In Zhao Yi's opinion, Qi Nan's 2 million was simply a joke, a waste of money. Ma. Wu. D. What? Zhao Yi's expression stiffened slightly, and a sudden change flashed across his expression. Qi Nan's incoming sword strike was incomparably swift, so fast that he simply couldn't react in time. In the blink of an eye, the spiritual energy that Qi Nan had gathered with her sword suddenly appeared in front of him. Quick! It was so fast that Zhao Yi thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. After all, Qi Nan's spiritual power and physical strength were almost at their limits after going through a series of battles. The speed at which he drew his sword naturally couldn't be compared to when he was in high spirits when he first set up the arena. But now, Qi Nan actually recovered swiftly under everyone's watchful eyes. How was this possible? Zhao Yi expressed that he simply could not understand. Qi Nan caught the medicinal liquid the little stoic tossed over. It hadn't been more than a minute since she took it. He recovered just like that? Zhao Yi dodged Qi Nan's sword attack and sneered. Qi Nan, I think you've really lost your mind. What kind of medicine do you think that stoic face can give you? How can a medicinal liquid that can instantly restore your body be anything good? It must be an evil item. Don't take it too hard now. When the competition is over, you'll lose all your power and your cultivation. That'll be fun. When Qi Nan heard this, her entire body couldn't help but tremble slightly. Zhao Yi's nonsense truly struck a chord in her heart. Other people definitely didn't experience it as thoroughly as the person involved. This bottle of spirit-restoring medicinal liquid. Chapter 4164. It was truly miraculous. After he ingested it, he could feel his depleted spiritual energy being endlessly regenerated from his dantian within a few minutes. His entire body seemed to be soaked in a hot spring, emitting a cool and refreshing warmth. Qi Nan cast a shocked glance at Arbor, but the little girl only glanced at him indifferently, then continued to drink tea and eat snacks. What a pain in the ass. What exactly was she trying to express with that glance? Was there something wrong or nothing wrong? Qi Nan waved her hand to parry Zhao Yi's sword, but she was muttering in her heart. Unexpectedly, the power of this sword was so great that it almost knocked the flying sword out of Zhao Yi's hand. Zhao Yi's expression instantly became extremely unsightly. He didn't expect that when he went on stage to challenge a person whose spiritual energy was on the verge of depletion, the result would be unsatisfactory. Of course, all of this was caused by the stoic face. If it weren't for that stoic face's superfluous act of selling a bottle of spirit-returning medicinal liquid to Qi Nan would have already been thrown off the stage by him. The points that Qi Nan had previously earned should have all been inherited by him. Despicable stoic face, despicable to the extreme. While Zhao Yi was bewildered, the gray iron sword in his hand continuously slashed and stabbed at Qi Nan. He truly forced Qi Nan to the edge of the stage. Now he could only resort to trickery to win. When Gu Yixuan saw this, a faint trace of mockery flitted across the corner of his eyes. Mu Xiaoxua sat next to him, tightly wringing the handkerchief in her hand, and said softly, Will senior sect brother Zhao be okay? Why does it seem like he's slowing down? Even an ordinary woman without any cultivation could see that Zhao Yi was at a disadvantage in Qi Yinan's hands. How could the other cultivators not see it? Below the stage, more than half of the people looked at the lively Qi Yinan with measuring gazes. More than half of the people looked at the young crown princess, who was sitting upright and still, as if they were looking at a weirdo. Terrifying. What kind of medicinal liquid did the young crown princess have in her hands? How could a guy who was like a drowning dog be instantly transformed into a dragon, a tiger, and a tiger in high spirits after drinking a bottle of it? But the young crown prince consort was still expressionless. When she saw some people glancing at her, she completely ignored them. After eating and drinking his fill, he put away the food and closed his eyes to meditate. She actually didn't need to adjust her breathing, nor did she need to recover. For a person who had been idle for 2 to 4 hours without anyone challenging him, he was so idle that he could just sit there and count mushrooms. Since he had nothing to do, he might as well go into seclusion and cultivate. After all, he blocked his 5 senses and 6 senses. After entering seclusion, the surroundings were no longer as noisy. It was too noisy. This group of people was like a bunch of idiots. They were going to compete here for 7 days and 7 nights. And they weren't even allowed to leave for a meal during this period. The competition itself was simply sick. At this moment, a student from the royal school could not help but cry out, "Hey, look at that young Master Qi. Aren't his attacks getting faster and faster?" Yes. Amazing. The Crown Princess's bottle of spiritual revitalization medicinal liquid worth 2 million spirit coins is really worth it. Not only was it worth it, it was simply a great discount. If it was a life and death struggle, think about it. How much of a change would this bottle of spiritual revitalization medicinal liquid bring to the entire battle situation? Chapter 4165. Only now did everyone know that the little crown princess was actually helping that Qi Yinan. They couldn't help but secretly criticize her in their hearts. The little crown princess really did things as she pleased. They heard that their talisman aristocratic family and Song State's Qi family competed with each other, and there were quite a few disdainful existences. They didn't expect the little crown princess, never played her cards according to the rules. She casually helped whoever she saw pleasing to the eye, and whoever she didn't see pleasing to the eye. For example, this Zhao Yi. They really didn't know how Zhao Yi had offended this little devil to be treated like this. The onlookers couldn't help but feel a faint sadness for Zhao Yi. They originally thought that they would be able to pick up a big loss on the stage, but who knew that the opponent would become more and more courageous. And now he was almost forced to the edge of the stage. The current Qi Yinan was indeed becoming more and more courageous as she fought, indescribably brave. He no longer had any doubts about the bottle of medicinal liquid that the little crown princess gave him before. How could such an excellent spirit-restoring, medicinal liquid be poisonous? Your whole family is poisonous. This spirit-restoring medicinal liquid was simply a miracle. It must be the work of a pharmaceutical genius. It definitely couldn't escape. Because Qi Yinan discovered that after drinking this medicinal liquid, not only did it replenish all of his spiritual power within minutes, what was even more frightening was it was endlessly replenishing his spiritual power. He calculated the time. It had already been more than half a quarter of an hour. But the spirit-restoring medicinal liquid was still working. No matter how much spiritual power he consumed, it had been slowly replenishing him. Although the speed of replenishing spiritual power wasn't as stunning as the first one-time recovery, it was a slow replenishment of spiritual power. Which spirit-restoring medicinal liquid could do this? In any case, he hadn't seen it in any of the pill stores in Song State. He also didn't know how long the spirit-restoring medicinal liquid would last this time, and he felt extremely curious. Dean, look, the beautiful teacher from Jiawei Academy couldn't help but frown, turning her head to say to Li Xiangbei, "That student Qi Yinan's spiritual power seems to be increasing. What's going on?" Li Xiangbei's face had been taut all this time. As if he had thought of something, his whole face darkened a little. "It's that bottle of medicinal liquid's problem." Li Xiangbei couldn't help but look at Dean Yin, who was sitting with his back to him. Did this dean already know from the start that this little girl actually had a very powerful medicinal liquid in her hands? Then, wouldn't the other royal academies also have this type of medicinal liquid? Oh no. A bottle of medicinal liquid cost 2 million spirit coins. It seemed that not many people could afford it. Furthermore, alchemists needed a long time to refine pills. To be able to concoct such a heaven-defying medicinal liquid, it would naturally take a very long time. Li Xiangbei muttered to himself, feeling that he must have hit the nail on the head. How could he have known that the little stoic could mass-produce a lot of this spirit-restoring medicinal fluid in minutes? Moreover, it didn't require many special herbs. To make this kind of spirit-restoring medicinal liquid, it was all made from ordinary medicinal herbs. The cost was only a few spirit coins. The most special thing was probably the drop of holy water from the little water child. As for the holy water, she could get as much as she wanted. She didn't need to worry too much about it. As a result, everyone felt that the little stoic's spiritual medicinal liquid this time was very high-end. With such a high price, it must be difficult to produce. But in the end, that's not the case at all. In the little girl's opinion, these people of the secular world were indeed somewhat foolish. Do you think that the higher the price, the better the medicinal properties? Chapter 4166. Who told them that those good pills and elixirs required heaven rank and above medicinal herbs to concoct? In reality, the Stoic face used intermediate rank medicinal herbs the most when concocting pills and elixirs. In the past, there were many medicinal herbs planted on Paradise Planet and Chuyin Planet. But now Forest Planet was overwhelming, and they had almost everything they could think of. Unless it was extremely rare, Forest Planet might not have it. While everyone vied for discussion, Qiyinan took out an attack talisman from her sleeve and stuck it to Zhao Yi's shoulder. After a crisp bang, everyone saw that Zhao Yi was sent flying by the attack talisman. Everyone involuntarily clicked their tongues. How rare! Zhao Yi, this punk, happily went up the stage, but in the end, he was sent flying so pathetically. This was all thanks to a bottle of spirit-returning medicinal liquid provided by the little girl. At this time, everyone's gazes involuntarily landed on the little stoic, and they all looked at her incredulously. This little stoic crown princess was too amazing. I heard that the crown princess is a very remarkable pill master. Indeed, Her Majesty the Empress of the Divine Province, who had been in a coma for many years, was also treated by the Crown Princess. So you mean that the Crown Princess was the one who concocted that bottle of spirit-returning medicinal liquid? The person who raised this question had a surprised expression on his face. However, the people around him all cast him disdainful gazes. Ignorant and ill-informed. Could it be that you haven't heard that Her Majesty the Empress of the Divine Province was treated by the Crown Princess, and that His Majesty issued a general amnesty because of this? That person rubbed his nose in embarrassment. He indeed didn't know about this matter. After all, as cultivators, they usually stayed in the mountains and valleys. How would they know so many things about the imperial court? Alright, don't mock senior brother. It's pardonable that senior brother isn't clear about this matter. After all, this crown princess really is very low-key in her actions. That's right. Everyone pursed their lips meaningfully in Zhao Yi's direction and joked. Otherwise, this senior brother Zhao of the City of Shadows wouldn't be so contemptuous of the bottle of spirit-returning medicinal liquid that the crown princess concocted. That's right. The other person nodded in amusement. In the beginning, didn't he look at Qiyinan with a malicious expression and warn him to be careful of the medicinal liquid that the Crown Prince Consort gave him, and that it would destroy his cultivation foundation? It's really a slap in the face every minute. At this point, the group of people couldn't help but laugh. The little stoic sat cross-legged in meditation, and had already entered a meditative state. Naturally, it was impossible for him to hear the weird laughter and discussions of the people around him. Anyway, even if she heard it, she would probably turn a deaf ear to it. After all, these people only flattered Qiyinan because they saw the amazing effect of the medicine on her body. They repeatedly spoke good words for her, and did not hesitate to belittle the unlucky senior brother. Zhao Yi 17 to 18 times. In terms of character, these people were not much better than Zhao Yi. The group of people below were in a heated discussion. The outcome of the battle between Zhao Yi and Qi Yinan had already been decided. Qi Yinan kicked Zhao Yi onto the stage and pointed the longsword in her hand at Zhao Yi's neck. The latter's expression changed slightly, and his entire body trembled slightly. Only then did he close his eyes with a dejected expression. Damn it, he actually really lost to this Zhangzhou's talisman clan's Qi Yinan. Chapter 4167. You're just taking advantage of the crown princess of the divine land. Zhao Yi still managed to sneer. Naturally, he was unconvinced. Who would be convinced? He was supposed to be the winner. Qi Yinan was so tired that he was about to collapse. In the end, the little crown princess threw a bottle of liquid medicine over. That damn Qi Yinan seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. The more she fought in this battle, the more spirited she became. What kind of logic was this? Qi Yinan was also very excited. He held his sword and stood still. He pretended to be very tired, and was about to sit down cross-legged. Gu Yixuan stood up from his seat and flew to the arena. He said calmly, Gu Yixuan from the City of Shadows. I'd like to learn from you. The audience was in an uproar. The brothers and sisters from the City of Shadows were really shameless. They were really trying to take advantage of the opportunity to kill Qi Yinan. How did Qi Yinan offend them? Why did they do this? Qi Yinan's lips curled into a faint sneer. But he was very excited. His spiritual power was still rising. The last blow, which sent Zhao Yi flying, had cost him a lot of spiritual power. And at this moment, in just a short few seconds, it had recovered quite a bit. This was really the elixir of the gods. Qi Yinan looked excitedly in the direction of the crown princess. He was thinking, why don't I ask the crown princess for a bottle later? Even if I have to spend more spirit coins, it doesn't matter. This elixir of the gods, even if I don't use it in the competition, it's still quite valuable. I must have a good relationship with the crown princess. Qi Yinan took a deep breath. In the blink of an eye, he saw Gu Yixuan rushing up. The corner of Qi Yinan's mouth flashed with a faint mocking smile. Compared to Zhao Yi, Gu Yixuan's cultivation was much weaker. Now he dared to run up to the arena. Was he here to humiliate himself? He was so much weaker than Zhao Yi, but he dared to show off in front of him. Qi Yinan's mouth curved into a sarcastic smile. In the blink of an eye, Gu Yixuan's fiery fist was about to land heavily on him. Qi Yinan raised her hand and slashed out with her sword. The fierce wind carried the terrifying qi of a mountain torrent. Suddenly, he slammed into Gu Yixuan's chest. Roars of excitement could be heard from the audience. Qi Yinan had actually fought more than 10 battles in a row. Now she had sent Gu Yixuan flying out of the arena, with just one strike? Gu Yixuan, who was flying in the air, was struck in the chest and fell out of the arena. He was still thinking about this question. What's going on? Just now, when he saw Qi Yinan's weariness, he just wanted to go on stage and take advantage of her. But he didn't expect Qi Yinan was pretending to be tired. But the problem was, he had indeed gone through more than a dozen battles. So why was he still alive and kicking? Gu Yixuan originally wanted to show his face in front of junior sister Xiao Shui. But in the end, his face was thrown all the way to the sea of forgetfulness. Thinking of this, Gu Yixuan felt uncomfortable. When he landed heavily on the ground, he seemed to have sprained his ankle. When he raised his head, he saw Zhao Yi's mocking face. Son of a bitch, he still wanted to pretend to be a hero in front of him. This Gu Yixuan really wasn't a good person. He wanted to let junior sister know that he, Zhao Yi, couldn't beat someone, but he, Gu Yixuan, could easily finish them off. Ha ha ha, in the end, this son of a bitch was finished off in one move. He really went for wool, and came home shorn. Gu Yixuan was furious. Chapter 4168. But since he was so humiliated, he didn't have the face to continue being a disgrace in the front row of the audience. After all, the expressions on everyone's faces were a bit strange. Looking at him was like looking at a clown. It was a clown. Gu Yixuan closed his eyes and got up from the ground. He didn't return to the Shadow Academy's seating area, but dragged his sprained leg and walked out of the arena. Mu Xiaoxue showed an unbearable expression and stood up uneasily. She called out softly, "Senior Gu." Gu Yishuan looked back at her with a bitter smile and walked out dejectedly with his head lowered. "Senior Gu, little junior sister, let him be alone for a while." Lin Jun'er patted Mu Xiaoxue's shoulder and consoled her softly. Gu Yishuan wanted to show off, but he didn't. He made a fool of himself in front of everyone, and in front of his most admired junior sister. He probably wouldn't be able to recover in a short time. Zhao Yi returned to his seat and sneered, overestimating himself. "Senior brother Zhao." Mu Xiaoxue called out softly and glared at Zhao Yi with a coquettish look. "Senior Gu has suffered a big blow. As fellow disciples, let's not say things that will make him feel bad. At this time, we should be united." Many disciples from Fire-Smelting City and Ice-Sealed City were sitting beside the Shadow City. Now that they heard Miss Mu's unrestrained voice, they couldn't help but turn to look at her. Mu Xiaoxue blushed and nodded with a smile at Situi and the rest who turned to look at her. Situi was baffled and turned back to say a few words to Wei Nanfeng beside him. The gentle expression on Mu Xiaoxue's face stiffened slightly. Liang Qingqing couldn't help but laugh. She shook her head and turned back, laughing softly. "What a kind and benevolent little white flower." "Little white flower? Where? Where?" And Lu shook his head and looked left and right. Fortunately, Mu Xiaoxue's hearing wasn't good. She naturally couldn't hear Liang Qingqing's muttering. Otherwise, she would probably be crying her eyes out. Royal Academy's Qin Xian vs. Devil Star Academy's Luo Xian. Royal Academy Mo Lian vs. Joey Academy. Royal Academy's Qin Xian vs. Joey Academy. After a few impassioned reports, Nyonya Duo became excited again. Holding the loudspeaker in his hand, he said to the crowd in a strange voice, "Everyone look! In this round, the Royal Academy will be facing the students from the Joey Academy. Joey Academy, do your best. You live in Joey City, and Joey City is your home ground. However, you have lost one after another, which has disappointed all of us citizens. This time, I hope the students of Joey Academy can create 2 miracles." The 2 hosts were like cannonballs talking nonstop. Mo Lian, Qin Xian and Qin Xian, who were flying towards the stage, all looked expressionlessly at the 2 noisy fellows. 3 pairs of beautiful eyes that were either cold or mocking instantly silenced those 2 fellows and made them leave the stage obediently. Without any suspense, he rolled away. Otherwise, they could still talk for a while. "Really? Let the competition begin," the 2 hosts shouted in a loud voice. That Fiend Star Academy's Luo Xian chuckled as she looked at second young Master Qin, who was dressed in a moon-white academy uniform and had sharp brows and starry eyes. Chapter 4169. All of a sudden, he felt himself being sent flying outwards. Mo Lian and Qin Xian, who had attacked at the same time, also used one move, a flick of their sleeves to send their opponents flying. Cough, 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 cough. Elder Ko almost choked on his own saliva. The entire crowd was stunned and fell into silence. Principal Yun slapped his thigh and stood up with a loud clap. Good, 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 good. This fellow had said good 5 times in a row. Everyone looked at him with disdain. How could this not be good? Could the royal school still have any shame? Previously, they had let the little crown princess, this pervert, fight in the arena. This was already very scary, all right? Now how many high-level cultivators had the royal school sent? Ha 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 ha. Principal. Elder Ko's old face twitched, and he raised his hand to tug at the corner of his shirt. He couldn't help but call out again. Principal. How could he not be excited? Look at this villain's smug face, too freaking weird. As the principal of a school, how could you laugh so wildly in public? Where would Li Xiangbei from the Joey Academy put his face? There was indeed no way to put it down. There was nowhere to put it. It was too embarrassing. Once they met, he didn't even have time to say, "Please take care of me," before he was flung out of the arena. He even fell with a bloody nose and a swollen face, with crooked eyes and a slanted mouth. The despicable royal school, they definitely did this on purpose. Purposely embarrassing Li Xiangbei, purposely making him go crazy. No, he had to calm down. He couldn't fall into that scum Yin Piamiao's trap. The more he laughed wildly, the more he had to calm down. Calm down, calm down. Li Xiangbei took a few deep breaths before he managed to suppress his anger. At this moment, Emolian, Chinda and Omega Kotoku had already floated down from the arena and walked over casually. This was intolerable. Li Xiangbei couldn't help but say coldly, "Everyone from the royal school is indeed unusually cunning. You actually used such a method to defeat our Jiawei Academy. What do you mean?" Yin Piamiao couldn't help but glance at this guy. She snorted and said, "What nonsense do you want to say now? Don't hide it, just say it all. I don't have the time to listen to you blabbering all day long and slandering the reputation of the Royal Academy." "Are they not?" Li Xiangbei said angrily. "Are these people really students from the royal school? Ignorant and inexperienced?" Yin Piamiao said proudly, "Our royal school accepts talents from all 3 continents. How is he not a student of the royal school? Let me tell you, within the royal school, there are at least 18 experts like them." Emolian sat down expressionlessly, no longer bothering with Yin Piamiao. Chinda and Omega Kotoku had similar expressions. They sat down and didn't want to say a word to the arrogant dean. Li Xiangbei was so angry that his entire body trembled. He pointed at Yin Piamiao and said, You cheated. I'll go." Yin Piamiao slapped away the finger that he was pointing at her. "Can you be more mature, Dean Li? You're giving me the feeling that you're angry out of humiliation." Dean. On the other side, Instructor Broadaxe and the beautiful instructor hurriedly persuaded him to go back. Preposterous. Li Xiangbei sat in his seat and kept muttering. He had never seen such a shameless person like Yin Piamiao in his life. "You can go to sleep first. The rest of the night is before 12 o'clock. Chapter 4170. Li Xiangbei propped himself up with both hands, barely suppressing the fury in his heart. "Go and call Buyi over. Have him challenge that fellow from the Qi clan." Instructor Broadaxe and the beautiful instructor couldn't help but be taken aback. They both turned to glance at Dean Li. Shouldn't they challenge the Imperial Academy's little stoic crown prince consort in order to regain their face from the Imperial Academy? What was going on? Why did he have to challenge Qi Nan? Was she easy to bully? Li Xiangbei remained silent with a cold expression. 2 hours had already passed since Qi Nan drank that bottle of medicinal liquid. Evidently, the effects of that spirit-restoring medicinal liquid were about to wear off. Li Xiangbei was very clear that once Qi Nan's medicinal effects wore off, Qi Nan definitely wasn't Buye's match. Even though this Buyi was extremely difficult to control and had many demands. But now, he was at his wit's end. If he didn't let him go on stage, was he supposed to watch helplessly as Jiawei Academy set a remarkable record of 0 wins? Look at how unlucky Jiawei Academy was from the start of the competition until now. When they encountered the Royal Academy, they lost. Either they lost or they lost. It practically cast a shadow in Li Xiangbei's heart. This damned Yin Piamiao. Just how many peerless geniuses from the 3 continents did he accept into the academy? Did he even have any chance of winning this competition? Although Buye's cultivation wasn't as high as Zhang Chunlong's, as a second-level god-tier master, his methods were more than a level higher than Zhang Chunlong's. As long as he didn't encounter those 3 from the Royal Academy, and didn't take the initiative to challenge the little crown princess, he should be able to continue fighting. Li Xiangbei lowered his voice and said, "Hurry and go. Take advantage of the fact that the crown princess of the divine province is in closed-door meditation to have Buyi challenge Qi Nan." Everyone was probably very clear on how unlucky Qi Nan was when this young man named Buyi jumped onto the stage. Qi Nan felt that oppressive aura rush toward her and knew things weren't looking good. This person's aura was too tyrannical. She wasn't this person's match at all. Even if she was at her peak, she still wouldn't be able to defeat this person in front of her, let alone in this kind of situation. Qi Nan turned her head to glance at the little stoic crown princess on stage number 6, and saw that her slightly furrowed brows didn't even look in her direction. He could not help but let out a long sigh. If the little crown princess was willing to sell him another bottle of spirit-restoring elixir, he wouldn't fight with the man in front of him. But now, Nan spat out the word I. He felt an intense divine power from his opponent striking his chest. The attack was as fast as lightning, leaving Nan no time to think about how to dodge. Just as his brain was spinning rapidly, and he was about to move away, the divine power had already landed on his body. His brain was still slow to react to this attack. In other words, the other party had attacked him as soon as they had met. Poof! Nan's body fell backwards and fell heavily. He spat out a mouthful of blood. The young man in front of him looked like he was in his early 20s. He had a round face and a smile on his face. He wasn't very handsome, but his features were very delicate. However, this seemingly cheerful young man was extremely ruthless in his attacks. He heavily injured Nan in one move and eliminated him. When he saw Nan fall to the ground, he even wanted to take a few steps forward and crush the bones in his hand. Fortunately, Nan promptly admitted defeat. Chapter 4171. The two hosts were also kind-hearted. When they saw that the situation wasn't right, they braced themselves and flew up shouting, Nan concedes defeat. Nan concedes defeat. Concedes defeat. Concedes defeat. This shout sent the crowd into a frenzy. Nuno fearlessly rushed up and blocked Wuxia with his hand. He straightened his back and stood next to Nan, saying sternly, You can't move anymore. You can't move anymore. Nan concedes defeat. Very good. You are the next arena master of our arena number 3. Student Wuxia from Jiawei Academy has successfully challenged arena number 3 and will inherit the previous arena master's points. 1,200. Congratulations, Student Wuxia. Congratulations, congratulations. Duo also wiped her sweat and looked at Wuxia with a slightly horrified expression. She didn't expect this student Wuxia from Jiawei Academy to be so savage and terrifying despite his fair, delicate, and adorable appearance. Previously, the other person had already admitted defeat, yet he was still unwilling to give up and wanted to step up and break the other person's limbs. Wuxia giggled and was about to speak when he suddenly sensed something. He abruptly turned his head. At some unknown time, Arbor had already opened his eyes. At this time, the little stoic was coldly looking at this man on arena number 3. Huge waves billowed in the depths of her eyes. She seemed to have seen this person before in her previous life, but her impression was a bit hazy, and she couldn't grasp some important details. She completely couldn't remember where she had seen this person before, or what he had done. This made her involuntarily crease her brows slightly. No matter what, this person's aura gave her a gloomy and unbridled feeling. He definitely wasn't a good person. Wuxia was startled, but then he opened his mouth and laughed, revealing a row of porcelain-white teeth at the little stoic. What? You want to avenge Nan? Wuxia smiled provocatively. Then come challenge this arena master. Arbor looked at him icily. This gaze made Wuxia even more displeased, and he couldn't help but crease his brows. Who was this stoic face looking at? Through his face, his gaze was unfathomable, as if he was looking at an ancient monster or a corpse. Dean Li, who had originally been full of joy and thought that the Jiawei Academy had finally regained its dignity, was now in a daze. At this moment, his face couldn't help but stiffen. He gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, What is Bai doing? You're courting death. Wasn't that just courting death? He actually invited the young crown princess to challenge him? If this wasn't courting death, then what was? Now, everyone knew that the little crown princess seemed to have endless tricks up her sleeves. Even if she were to consume the elixir of returning elixir and drag it out with others, perhaps not many people would be able to defeat the crown princess before exhausting their own strength. Not wild. Dean Li's expression became even more gloomy and ugly. What he wanted was for Bai to at least enter the top 10, instead of letting him court death the moment he entered the arena. There were still more than 5 days before he could enter the arena. Actually, the timing wasn't too good. Everyone knew that the earlier one entered the arena, the more exhausted one would be after a few rounds of fighting. As a result, It was impossible for those who were scheming to enter the arena so early, unless they were extremely confident in their own strength. For example, someone like the little crown princess. The little crown princess didn't know that in everyone's eyes, she had the image of someone who possessed a miraculous elixir, had a card up her sleeve, and was exceptionally talented. Chapter 4172. In reality, everyone didn't know that her main objective in going up the arena was. She was too lazy to fight over and over again. It was better if others came knocking on her door, or ganged up on her. That way, she could defeat more people in one go and obtain more points MHM. It was that simple. But now, the little stoic expressionlessly looked at the youth, who continued to court death at her in arena number 3, and blinked her large eyes. Duodwa's eyes and ears were everywhere. When she saw the little lady's expression, she immediately blocked in front of her and raised her hand to shout. During the competition, all arena masters who successfully set up their arenas are not allowed to leave their arenas under any circumstances. Arena number 3 and arena number 6. The arena masters will continue to accept challenges from other people. Challengers can directly go up on stage and announce their names. Arbor glanced at Bai on arena number 3 and raised her pinky finger to point in the air. You're dead meat. Everyone fuck, why did this stoic face look so fierce and adorable? It looked like the stoic never looked at looks when she beat people up. After all, when little ladies saw Bai's delicate and adorable face, they would more or less develop a favorable impression of him. It was naturally much more convenient for good-looking people to roam the pugilistic world. Bai looked at her with a grin and said, Okay, then I'll wait for you to teach me a lesson. In the blink of an eye, a pitch-black color spread across Arbor's eyes. The demonic pitch-black color invaded her eyes, and her entire pupils seemed to be dyed pure black in that instant, as if she was in an icy abyss. Emo Lien was startled, but she immediately stood up and called Jojo. When Arbor heard the call, she turned to look in Prince Mo's direction. She blinked, and her expression gradually returned to normal. Only a pair of large, watery eyes stared unblinkingly at the crown prince, seemingly a bit aggrieved. Emo Lien was alarmed, but she also let out a slight sigh of relief. Just as he was about to fly to his wife's side, he heard Omega Kotoka say coldly, You can call her back for a moment, but can you call her back for a lifetime? Eldest young Sir Chin lightly waved his fan. How strange. Does this little fellow know that person called Bai? As far as I know, this Bai has always been in the Divine Province, and has never been to the lower star domain. Eldest young Sir Chin asked with a chuckle. May I know when the little stoic met him? Emo Lien naturally wouldn't satisfy eldest Chin's curiosity, so she merely turned her head and coldly glanced at him. This one isn't wild. It's said that he used to be from the Liu family of Zhangzhou. However, a few years ago, he suddenly poisoned his own family and killed everyone in the night before hurriedly fleeing to Jiawei City. He's doing well in the black market. Eldest young Sir Chin waved his fan and generously shared all the information he knew with everyone. How could this kind of person have any interactions with the little stoic? The little stoic's expression just now was very strange. For a moment, the way he looked at his enemy seemed to be somewhat similar to the way he looked at his second brother. This little thing had a lot of secrets on it. He really couldn't see through it. Students, as long as you're on stage 3, you'll be able to challenge me. You can get a free bottle of spirit-restoring elixir. If you succeed in the challenge, you'll get 10 bottles for free. Eldest young Sir Chin wanted to ask more questions, but he heard an icy and crisp voice cut him off. The crowd immediately went into a frenzy. When everyone heard this, they thought, fuck, if you succeed in the challenge, you'll get 10 bottles of spirit-restoring elixir worth 20 million spirit coins. Instantly, they all eagerly signed up for the challenge. That's why it was said never to offend a pill alchemist. You'll be out of luck. The 10th watch ended. Chapter 4173. Naturally, being bullied by the little stoic as a target, Bai was so angry that the veins on his forehead bulged. He wished for nothing more than to directly scold her. Fuck, why was this little stoic so hateful? His face, which had always been smiling like a tiger, almost couldn't hold it in. Pill alchemists were amazing. Fuck, pill alchemists were indeed amazing. Look, it was only a few sentences, but they could stir up the wind, clouds, sun and moon. Many people scrambled to curry favor and jumped onto ring number 3 one after another, shouting, "Challenge! Challenge! Challenge! Challenge my ass! You have to line up for a challenge." Duo and Nuno were grinning from ear to ear as they repeatedly said, "As expected, everyone's fighting spirit is high. Don't worry, everyone has a share and can fight. Everyone line up and sign up one by one. Student Bai, you have to be careful." Duo turned around and looked sympathetically at the red-faced Bai. "Normally, you'll be challenged consecutively after 10 rounds of ranking matches. Please prepare as soon as possible." Nuno also nodded heavily. "Be careful, Student Bai." Bai's expression was extremely unsightly. Below, Li Xiangbei's expression was even more unsightly. When he looked up and saw Yin Piaomiao's smiling face that deserved a beating, he truly felt that it was extremely irksome. "How pitiful," Yin Piaomiao said with a smile. "I didn't expect that everyone would line up to beat you up as soon as you stepped onto the stage. Headmaster Li, I sincerely sympathize with you on behalf of all the teachers and students of the academy." Li Xiangbei naturally couldn't keep his old face. It was stretched taut and abnormally frightening. "Ha ha 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 ha, Headmaster." Elder Ke couldn't resist twitching his mouth. If he were Li Xiangbei, he also wouldn't be able to restrain himself, and would probably slap this guy to death. Headmaster Li was still able to keep his composure. Yin Piaomiao flicked the non-existent dust under his clothes, and turned his head to Snort. "Who told him to come looking for trouble all day long? Who else would the headmaster attack if not him?" Elder Ke gave him a look that said, "If revenge breeds revenge, will there ever be an end to it?" At the same time, the people lining up for ring number 3 had already formed a long line at the passageway below the stage dam. Judging from the situation, could it be that there are about 300 people? Qin Zhou couldn't help but exclaim. Eldest young Sir Qin waved his fan with a smile. "Oh my, so pitiful. Nothing good ever comes out of offending that little fellow." Omega Kotoku pursed his lips. On the other hand, Ming Yasi seemed to have thought of something as he silently lowered his brows. "Why isn't everyone speaking?" Eldest young Sir Qin asked with a wink. "Let's continue our previous topic." No one paid any attention to him. Emmeline's cold gaze landed on the third ring. She carefully sized up the smiling young man, who was gritting his teeth, and smiling even in the face of such a predicament. Jiawei City was indeed full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. The little stoic sat there cross-legged, her pair of beautiful eyes staring fixedly in the direction of platform number 3. What's going on? Who is this person? Where did this strange sense of familiarity come from? Xiao Mu took a deep breath and reflexively pressed down on her head. She knew that there were many things that had been sealed in a corner of her heart. She never wanted to explore them, much less look back at them. She raised her hand and lowered her eyes, gently pressing down on the godly ruins mirror. She felt a slight heat at this spot. Arbor took a deep breath and did her best to calm herself down before calmly lowering her eyes. Chapter 4174. There were many things that she didn't want to investigate, but that didn't mean that she didn't dare. It was just that she didn't want to. Soon, Bai's arena number 3 became lively. More than 300 people lined up neatly below his arena. This situation was truly an unprecedented and spectacular sight. No one really thought of lining up at the back to pick up the leftovers. Everyone scrambled to be first, mainly because they were afraid that they wouldn't be able to get a share of the medicinal elixir if they lined up at the back. Arbor didn't express any opinion about this. She merely waved her fair hand and fished out a chest of spirit-restoring medicinal elixir, telling everyone with facts, "Don't panic, everyone will have a share, and there will never be any left." Eldest young Sir Qin's eyelids twitched fiercely. Holy shit, this little lady was too ruthless. Directly taking out a chest of spirit-restoring medicinal elixir. How could they endure this? The 7th young lord Qin Chong, who was sitting at the side, smiled sarcastically and said, "How extravagant. If it were me, I would also want to go up and fight. Qin Jiu immediately jumped up. I'll go. Seventh Qin's expression turned ugly at once, and he turned back to glare fiercely at Qin Jiu. He reprimanded. Why are you joining in the fun? Upon seeing this, Qin Jiu chuckled mischievously and said, Of course I also want that bottle of spirit-restoring medicinal elixir. All right. Eldest young Sir Qin chuckled as he smoothed things over. Since little Jiu wants to go, then let him go up and try. Don't tell me you aren't curious about that bottle of spirit-restoring medicinal elixir. Seventh Qin snorted and reflexively touched his left arm, gazing coldly at fifth young Sir Qin, who was sitting next to him. Ever since that incident with Feng Mulan, his left arm had been broken by the little lady's ferule, and after returning to the clan, he had been whipped 30 times. Thanks to her, his injuries hadn't completely recovered yet. This little lady was innocent and cute on the outside, but she was a pitch-black mass on the inside. She truly had a rare heartlessness and callousness. The battle on Arena number 3 was in full swing, and everyone eagerly leaped over there. Because everyone quickly discovered that as long as they could persist for more than a minute on Arena number 3, they would receive a bottle of spirit-restoring medicinal elixir. And everyone who took the special spirit-restoring medicinal elixir would discover that their essence, energy, and spirit would recover without restraint. Even though he had used all his strength, after the battle with Buyi ended and he left the arena, he still found that his spiritual power naturally recovered very quickly within 2 hours. They finally understood why Qi Nan from the Qi family was getting more and more aggressive. So it was because this spiritual returning elixir had a sustainability. After he told the others about the special effects of the potion, more and more people came to challenge him. Finally, after 6 hours of nonstop battle, the medicinal pills that could be used on him were all used up. Therefore, he could only grit his teeth and announce that he was giving up on defending the ring. Li Xiangdong's old face was so dark that it couldn't be looked at. Especially when he turned his head and saw Principal Yun's smiling face, he felt anger rising from his heart. Damn it! When Buyi jumped down from the stage, he glanced darkly at the little stoic. At this moment, the stoic face's eyes were wide open, and her gaze was icily fixed on him. Suddenly, he raised his hand and shouted, Where are the crown princess's personal guards? Everyone was speechless. The fan and eldest young Sir Qin's hand fell to the ground with a clatter. Seventh Qin's expression turned unsightly in a split second. Willful and reckless. Pass down my order. Execute this person. What was arrogance? This was it. Directly giving an order in public under everyone's watchful eyes. Chapter 4175. Was she this terrifying? Everyone was stupefied as they stared incredulously at the little girl in front of them. This sudden change in attitude was truly like flipping through a book. It was completely incomprehensible. Hearing her words, Buye's smiling face finally changed color. In a panic, he ran towards the back of the Saint Auspicious Arena, without looking where he was going. At the same time, there were several whooshing sounds in the wind. Countless figures shot up from the seating area and chased after Buyi in a hurry. Duo opened her mouth and turned around to meet the male host's eyes. The little stoic's sudden change in mood caught people off guard. Her mood also eased quickly. However, she silently sat back down in a flash, as if she hadn't done anything just now. She silently sat on stage number 6 and lowered her eyes in silence. Just like this, after 6 days of fighting, the final day of the Heavenly Origin ranking competition finally arrived. Regardless of whether they were competitors or spectators, both on and off the stage, the majority of people had extremely comical panda eyes and were mentally exhausted. The deafening cheers on the surrounding stages also became much softer. Wasn't this nonsense? Fuck. Why don't you try making a person continuously shout in excitement for 7 days and 7 nights? Can you still live properly? I am Sir Jojo's section break. Go in. After being shoved by someone, Mu Rochuan stumbled into the room and immediately felt like she had nowhere to step. Red and gold curtains were hung in the room, and it was extremely clean. Smoke curled in spirals, and the furnishings were clean. Against the window was a small table made of gold and silk, and a white jade saucer was placed on top of it. The fragrance of tea permeated the air, unable to conceal the flourishing atmosphere in the room. For a moment, Mu Rochuan had a strange feeling that she seemed to be in a dream. Who are you people? As the Mu family's eldest miss, Mu Rochuan naturally had seen the world. She wouldn't be dazzled by this fragrant room, and her mind was clear and calm. However, she was dressed in rags, covered in filth, and her hair was unkempt. Standing in this boudoir, and stepping on the thick furry carpet, she felt like she was standing on the tip of a needle, extremely out of tune with this place. Who is it that brought her here? Mu Rochuan looked up and saw a beautiful yellow-clothed woman walk in. She bowed to her and said with a smile, "Miss Mu, please wait a moment. My master will be here soon." Mu Rochuan stood there, feeling a little uneasy, but when she thought about it again, she realized that she was just a cripple now. Even her beauty was gone. When a person loses everything and has nothing else to lose, why should they be afraid of anything else? So she just stood there in the fragrant room, her eyes downcast, not saying a word. "Your temperament is much steadier than before." A faint voice came from behind the gorgeous bead curtain. Hearing this familiar voice, Mu Rochuan instantly raised her head and stared at her with wide eyes in shock. "Mother." Mu Rochuan was slightly agitated. His hands, which were hanging by his sides, involuntarily moved a little. Mu Qingya's gaze fell on her, and she sized up her daughter. Her gaze was especially indifferent, as if she was looking at an outsider and not her own daughter. Mu Qingya was dressed in a flowery brocade gown, with her hair in a graceful and luxurious Fatian bun. She was exuding a luxurious fragrance, just like a madam of a noble family. Chapter 4176. In comparison, Mu Rochuan, who stood in front of her, was even worse than a child beggar on the side of the road. Looking at the graceful and calm Mu Qingya, Mu Rochuan suddenly felt ashamed of her own inferiority. Her mother, holy and noble, was like the clouds in the sky. She seemed very close to her, but in fact, she was thousands of miles away. She was so far away that she couldn't touch her at all. "Rochuan." Mu Qingya looked at her dirty appearance, and her gaze suddenly fell on her left cheek. "What happened to your face?" Mu Rochuan raised her hand to touch her face. Scabs had already formed there, leaving behind an ugly centipede-like scar. "I destroyed it myself," Mu Rochuan said indifferently. "Why?" Mu Qingya raised her eyebrows and looked her up and down, as if she was suddenly interested in this daughter of hers. "Mother, don't you understand? A beautiful woman who had her cultivation destroyed, and both her hands broken. What would happen if she was driven to the branch family? Others won't think highly of me, just because I'm the eldest daughter of the main family. On the contrary, they'll do everything they can to humiliate me because of my previous noble status. Only by destroying this face can I continue to live my life with integrity." If she hadn't made the prompt decision to destroy her own face back then, perhaps she would have become a plaything in the hands of the young masters of the branch family. "Mother, I didn't expect you to be such a chaste woman," Mu Qingya said indifferently, but her eyes revealed that she couldn't agree with her. "Actually, as far as one's life is concerned, those worldly possessions are nothing. Reputation is just an external possession. Rochuan, you've disappointed me too much. To a woman, the body can be an extremely lethal weapon. You can use your beauty and body to do a lot of things," Mu Qingya said calmly. "If you were willing to give yourself to a powerful young master when you went to the branch family, you wouldn't be in such a sorry state now. You're useless with a disfigured face and a broken hand." Mu Qingya frowned and criticized mercilessly. "Although your father broke your hand and threw you out, your hands were still damaged. However, if the injury on my hand had been carefully nursed back to health and treated with medicine, it wouldn't have ended up like this. Your hand is completely crippled. What can you do in the future?" Mu Roxian's eyes widened in disbelief as she stared blankly at her mother. At this moment, she felt as if her heart had been shattered into pieces and was being mercilessly stepped on by someone else. She felt as if her heart had been crushed into mud. This was her mother, the mother who gave birth to her and raised her. He kept telling her how a woman should use her body to get what she wanted. Was this the mother that she had always respected? Her generous and magnanimous mother, who treated everyone with gentleness and gentleness? Mu Rochuan felt that the woman in front of her was too unfamiliar and terrifying. So, you actually used your body to exchange for your current position and glory in Tianyan? Mu Rochuan instinctively felt sarcastic, and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Mu Qingya looked at her daughter coldly. The yellow-clothed woman's expression immediately changed and she shouted angrily, "How dare you? How dare you be so rude to the hall master?" Mu Qingya raised her hand and stopped her from scolding. Chapter 4177. So you're already aware of my situation? It's all thanks to Mother's blessing, Mu Rochuan said indifferently. Even when I was far away in the branch family, I heard that the hall master of the heavenly fortune flying heavens hall had been painstakingly lurking in the Mu family for many years. Mu Qingya glanced at the yellow-clothed woman and said softly, Yes. The yellow-clothed woman immediately walked forward, took out a bottle of medicinal liquid, and handed it to Mu Rochuan. What is this? Mu Rochuan took a step back warily and stared at Mu Qingya. Your meridians are crippled, and you've lost all your cultivation. Mu Qingya's expression was especially cold. Take this medicinal liquid, and you can instantly recover from your injuries. If you're lucky, you might even obtain a special ability. Heavenly fortune can make the impossible possible. Mu Qingya said indifferently. It's just that your arms have been broken for almost 3 months. It might be a bit troublesome to treat them in the future. But don't worry, there's always a way. Mu Rochuan chuckled and tightly pursed her lips, tears involuntarily falling. Is that so? I'm flattered that Mother cares for me so much. I just don't know where Mother was, and what you were doing in the past 3 months. What were you doing when your daughter was suffering in the branch family, and could only disfigure her face to protect her chastity? Mu Qingya brushed her clothes indifferently and sighed. Rochuan, the one who wants to punish you is your father Mu Jingfeng. Your father insisted on punishing you for the sake of the crown princess, and Mother couldn't stop him. All right, now that everything is over, you can stay here with peace of mind. Mu Qingya stood up and said, Drink the medicinal liquid as soon as possible. It'll be good for you. Since I'm your mother, of course I'm thinking of you in every way. I won't force you, so think carefully whether you want to drink it or not. If you don't drink it, you can still stay here. Who told me to be your mother? Mu Qingya seemed to emit a gentle motherly light as she looked deeply at her. Mu Rochuan felt cold all over and shivered slightly. Since Mother wants me to drink, then I'll drink. Mu Rochuan sneered. In any case, there was nothing left for her to lose in this ruined body of hers. Even if he had to pay back his mother's life, it didn't matter. She took the medicinal liquid from her and drank it in one gulp. Then she frowned slightly. The feeling of consuming this medicinal liquid made her heart skip a beat. It felt like déjà vu. Mu Qingya, on the other hand, had been paying attention to her expression. At this moment, she saw a faint black light floating between her eyebrows. He couldn't help but exclaim, There's already a black crystal prototype? Have you ever taken this medicinal liquid before? Mu Rochuan's face also turned pale, and her body was on the verge of collapsing. She recalled that when she was in the Sun-Moon Mystery Realm, she had been severely injured and had been struck by lightning. At that time, the sun and moon alternated, and the secret realm was reversed. Someone gave her a scarlet pill to make her submit. She ate it. Now that he thought about it, it turned out that Tianyun's lackeys were among the group that had gone to the Sun-Moon Mystery Realm back then. Mu Rochuan's expression was very ugly. She originally wanted to nurture this daughter well, but the black crystal was very magical. When she swallowed the medicinal liquid, whoever she swore to would be her master. Chapter 4178. She didn't expect that someone had already taken a fancy to Mu Rochuan's talent. That's right. Mu Qingya thought that even if Mu Rochuan's cultivation was lost, it didn't matter. As long as she was transformed by Tianyun's basic mutated medicinal liquid, her body would recover one day. It would be even better if she could comprehend a special ability at that time. Moreover, with Mu Rochuan, her daughter who was proficient in talismans and spells, she could train more talisman and spell masters for her. Without mystic energy, she naturally couldn't draw high-level talismans, but at least she had a brain. But now it seemed that Mu Rochuan didn't have a brain at all. She had already recognized someone in the organization as her master. It was impossible for her to absorb her into the flying paradise. Damn it! Mu Qingya took a deep breath and looked at Mu Rochuan for a long time with an ambiguous gaze before saying faintly, "Take her away." This daughter was arrogant, conceited, and stupid. How could she have crawled out of her stomach? She had been teaching this daughter carefully all these years, but she didn't expect that she would achieve nothing in the end. Hall Master. A man in black entered the room and cupped his hands to Mu Qingya. "Hongchang, what's the matter?" Mu Qingya waved her hand and let her take Mu Rochuan away. Now she really didn't have the strength to talk nonsense with this idiot. "Hall Master. The people in the Hidden Moon Hall that you asked me to keep an eye on just used a large number of teleportation talisman arrays. Do you know where they went?" Mu Qingya suppressed the haze in her eyes and said solemnly, "It should be Jiawei City." Lord Jojo was counting mushrooms. Yun Piamiao stood up and narrowed her eyes at the blue, cloudless sky in the distance. Elder Ku beside her also stood up with a dignified expression. "It seems that many people are coming here." The competition was coming to an end. It was less than 2 hours before the end of the competition, so at this moment, everyone seemed to have been injected with chicken blood and were full of vigor. Yelling and shouting were incessant. A group of onlookers jumped up from their seats, and there was a bit of chaos below the stage. Everyone had been sitting for so long. Some began to walk around the field, while others wanted to fish in troubled waters and squeezed to the front. Just as everyone was laughing and joking while watching the competition, a strange and sharp whistling sound came from afar from the horizon. Ordinary people didn't know what was going on, but the cultivators all looked solemn. Some cautious people had already begun to be on full alert. Ho-ho-ho-ho. The giant wings flapped its giant wings, creating a dull wind sound. The people sitting in the front row, the bird's name Jiawei, what's that? Is that a bird? Or a monster? They saw a giant 9-headed bird dragging hundreds of carriages, flying towards them at a rapid speed, blotting out the sun. People A's group. "Look. Right." Nuno Duo, who didn't know what was going on, appeared beside them out of thin air and said with a smile, "Student Mo Lien from the Royal Academy. Do you want to challenge Student Arbor?" Mo Lien glanced at them in annoyance, grabbed Arbor's hand, pulled him behind her, and said in a deep voice, "Enemy attack, disperse." Chapter 4179. As they spoke, the strange 9-headed bird had already descended above their heads. It flapped its huge wings, and its pair of sinister little eyes flashed with an incomparably vicious light. Arbor was shielded behind Emolien, and only her pair of cold eyes stared at the strange 9-headed bird above them. This fellow was extremely large. When it flapped its wings, it created a gust of wind that was like a whirlpool, blowing the people below off their feet. The onlookers all cried out in panic and scrambled toward the entrance of the passageway. For a moment the field was in chaos. Many people were trampled, and cries of alarm could be heard from time to time. The strange 9-headed bird above them suddenly screeched. That sharp sound instantly caused many people's heads to buzz, and they spat out blood. From the hundreds of carriages that it was dragging, many corpse puppets with stiff bodies and strange faces suddenly drilled out. One by one, they stood there in the air, causing people's hair to stand on end. The strange 9-headed bird once again let out a long screech. As if they had received an order, those corpse puppets suddenly opened their eyes and moved their feet. It was as if they were following an invisible long staircase, descending from the sky. There was not a trace of white in the depths of their jet-black eyes. High-level corpse puppets. Arbor lowered her hand slightly, and a pitch-black crow-repeating crossbow poked out from under her sleeve. Ah! Strange roars filled the entire battlefield. Densely packed corpse puppets flew down from the sky, each holding an iron rod in their hands. They swung it at anyone they saw, and their eyes were filled with viciousness. The ordinary people were immediately scared out of their wits, and they all scattered and fled. Arbor's eyes focused and she sternly said, "Everyone stop. Don't run around carelessly." Dozens of jade talismans flew out from her fingertips, circling around the dozens of onlookers nearby and covering them. The jade talismans flickered, and a defensive wall instantly appeared in front of them. A young scholar who was closest to the wall could only watch as a pale-faced corpse puppet with scarlet eyes jumped onto the defensive wall and swept its claw across the transparent wall. For a moment, the young scholar's heart almost jumped out of his chest. Then he saw that the ferocious corpse puppet was struck by a blue light and shattered in front of him. "Everyone wear a protective suit. Don't get scratched by this thing," Emolian calmly instructed. Behind him stood several hundred black-clothed youths. Hearing this, they had already taken out protective clothing from their inner worlds at the fastest speed and put it on neatly. They said in unison, "Yes." Arbor flipped the talismans in his hand, and countless jade talismans flew out like a gust of wind. One by one, they built a square and indestructible defense under the viewing platform. The panicked commoners who did not know where to go were naturally anxious and rushed into the defensive wall one by one. The purple forest guards sprang into action, each of them wielding a specially modified repeating crossbow as they fired at the approaching corpse puppets. The sound of gravel rolling could be heard in the air. Suddenly, huge rocks were thrown down by the harpies, crashing into the crowd. The commoners behind the defensive wall were better off. Their faces were pale, and they huddled together in fear. The moment the rocks fell, they were destroyed by a layer of blue light on the defensive wall. As for the people who were running toward the defensive wall, some were directly smashed into meat paste by the rocks falling from the sky. Some of them were smashed head-on under the rocks. Their legs trembled a few times outside the rocks, and then they stopped breathing. Chapter 4180. More corpse puppets leapt forward, grabbing people and biting them without regard for anything else. Anyone that was bitten by them would gradually turn into a corpse in just 15 minutes. Their entire bodies started to tremble numbly and stiffly as they quickly joined the corpse puppet army. This way, the corpse puppet army would definitely expand and become more and more spectacular. There were many living people here, and it was definitely an excellent place to turn corpses. Arbor's expression was grave as he looked in front of him. Situ Yi, Liang Qingqing, and the others had already joined the battle, with a group of fire-smelting city and ice-sealed city disciples. They waved the sharp blades in their hands, and quickly pierced the crystal cores in the heads of the corpse puppets. The nine-headed strange bird that was flapping its wings gave off another shrill shriek. All the corpse puppets seemed to be guided by something, and instantly surrounded the crowd, as though they had been injected with chicken blood. They surrounded the defensive wall and slammed heavily against it. The normal people hiding behind the defensive wall were almost scared out of their wits at this time. They kept praying inside, hoping that this transparent defensive wall could hold on a bit and not be torn apart by the corpse puppets. Otherwise, the people inside would all be finished. As the sounds of fighting rose everywhere, people continuously picked up the weapons on the ground and fought with their lives on the line against the corpse puppets. Arbor shot out a few black gold arrows and killed a few high-level corpse puppets that were approaching. His face was filled with silence. In such a chaotic scene, those with high cultivation couldn't do anything at all. If they activated the absolute kill formation and attacked indiscriminately, the innocent bystanders below would definitely be caught in the crossfire. Emolian naturally thought of this as well, so she couldn't tell him to activate the holy fire to burn this place. They could only move towards the densest part of the corpse crowd and do their best to keep the power of the five spirits within a certain range, so as not to implicate anyone else. At this time, the nine-headed strange bird gave off a strange shriek. Arbor raised his head and saw Duan Muqing and Mu Xingchen fly into the air with mini Xiuzha and fight fiercely with the nine-headed strange bird. That strange bird had 9 heads and 18 pairs of small eyes. Its head could turn 360 degrees and had no blind spots. It could clearly see every Xiuzha fighting against it. With a shake of its body, it raised its head and howled. The ear-piercing sound instantly killed several practitioners with low cultivation. Mu Xingqian's expression darkened, and the flying sword in his hand flew out with a whoosh, aiming for the strange bird's neck. Only a dang sound was heard. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. This strange bird had a copper head and iron arms. And it didn't have a single weakness? Roar! Hundreds of harpies flew back and forth in the air, charging to the side of the strange nine-headed bird and guarding it like guards. Is this bird a nightcaw bird? Yes. Emolian held his wife's hand tightly and nodded with a solemn expression. However, it should have been greatly modified. This body is probably comparable to a holy beast. You stay here. I'll go meet him. Mu Xingqian and the others were no match for it. Emolian felt uneasy and held Arbor's hand. Arbor blinked slightly and raised his hand to hold his right hand. Be careful. Emolian nodded. A moon-white figure flew up and landed in front of the strange nine-headed bird. When he turned his head, he saw young Master Omega Kotoko had also flown up. At this time, he was silently standing beside him and coldly glancing at him. His eyes were extremely deep, as if they were filled with ice that would not melt for thousands of years. Chapter 4181. Emolian only glanced at him, frowned, and retracted her gaze. She carefully sized up the nine-headed bird in front of her. Among its 9 heads, only the one in the middle looked the most normal. Looking at the 8 heads, the closer they were to the side, the narrower they became. The 2 heads on the left and right were only slightly larger than an adult's fist. Their facial features were strangely squeezed together, like a sarcoma that had been cut several times. Black moon flashed in her hand, and a black flame climbed up. Without saying anything, it chopped towards the nine-headed bird's head. The strange bird let out an extremely unpleasant shriek, and its 2 sharp claws slapped. Although its body was excessively large, its speed wasn't weak. In an instant, it dodged the strange light shot by Black Moon, and at the same time, tore an ordinary cultivator with wide eyes and open mouth to pieces. Looking at the bloody scene in front of them, those hot-headed people who followed Mu Xingqian and Duan Muqing to fight the strange bird in the sky suddenly felt like a bucket of cold water had been poured over their heads. They were so frightened that they couldn't help but tremble. The strange bird flapped its wings and suddenly let out another shriek. Emolian's eyes darkened. Block your 5 senses. This shriek was definitely poisonous. It was clearly a different kind of sound wave attack that could destroy a cultivator's divine sense. Second young master leaped forward, stabbing the strange bird's claws with his sword. Suddenly, he turned around and retreated, withdrawing his sword. The place where he originally stood was suddenly attacked by countless flames. Second young master. The Qin family members cried out. Saintus! Several calls from afar reached Arbor's ears. Arbor, who was rapidly arranging defensive array glyphs, turned her head and saw Feng Zhangqing rushing over with several hundred disciples. Feng Zhangfei's handsome face was sullen as he followed behind his big brother. He glanced at her, wanting to say something but hesitated. Arbor didn't talk nonsense with them, and didn't bother to correct them for calling her Saintess. She only said in a low voice, "Save people." Yes. Feng Zhangqing nodded, and was about to leave with his clansmen. Arbor suddenly took out several dozen sets of protective clothing from her inner world, and threw them over along with a handful of talismans. Be careful. Feng Zhangqing's eyes flashed with a smile. He raised his hand and pulled his younger brother, who snorted from his nose, and hurriedly ran toward the crowd. Although Feng Zhangfei was grumbling, Elder is really meddlesome, forcing us to secretly protect him. What can happen to this stoic face? His hands, however, did not stop following his big brother's movements, clearing out all the nearby zombies, as if he was chopping vegetables and melons. He protected some of the pale-faced commoners and retreated. When Mu Xingqian and the others saw that Emolian had come over and was able to deal with the strange nine-headed bird, they immediately heaved a sigh of relief. They hurriedly turned around and called out to Little Fatty and the others, running over to fight the harpies. These harpies hung above everyone's heads like shit. Although they did not have the power of the 5 spirits, they would still throw some stones from the surroundings of the venue. It was not harmful to the Xiuzha, but it would harm the ordinary spectators below. Gongzi Omega Kotoku coldly looked in Emolien's direction, and suddenly raised his hand to block Qinjiu and the others who were about to rush forward. Let's take a look first. Qinjiu was taken aback. Second brother, we should hurry up and help Prince Mo. If Duan Yu was here, he definitely wouldn't hesitate like he was now. He would have helped Prince Mo fight this strange nine-headed bird in the morning. Qinjiu thought, but he didn't dare to refute the second young master, due to his accumulated power. Emolien doesn't need anyone's help. Chapter 4182. As he spoke, a faint cold glint flitted through his eyes. Emolien was such a proud person. Wouldn't helping him be an insult to him? Qin Xian's eyes were cold and indifferent. He lowered his eyes and took a step back while floating in the air. Behind him, Qin Jiu and the other Qin family disciples naturally followed suit and took a step back. It wasn't that Emolien didn't hear Qin Xian's words. He just didn't want to respond. He flew straight up with his sword and faced the strange nine-headed bird. As soon as the strange bird opened its mouth, a foul and sour smell naturally assaulted their nostrils. Emolien held his breath and threw out several streaks of black fire, all of which were aimed at the bird's middle head. After several pop-pop sounds, the strange bird immediately let out several unpleasant screeches. It shook its head and flapped its enormous wings, directly swatting at Emolien's head. Countless sparks slowly rose around it. Seeing the strange bird chase after him, Emolien's eyes darkened, and he raised his sleeve. Suddenly, with a few pop-pop sounds, the fire seeds that were originally floating around the strange bird like sparks exploded in the air, spewing out gorgeous black-purple flames that intertwined and entwined around the strange bird. Emolien wielded his sword in his left hand, while his right hand conjured up a fiery wind. The instant he transformed, a giant crimson dragon phantom opened its mouth, its whiskers billowing upwards. The dragon's eyes bulged as it chomped down on one of the nine-headed strange bird's heads. Second brother, over there, before Qin Jiu could finish speaking, he felt someone shove him. He turned around and saw Qin Chi smiling coldly at him. We're not on the same side to begin with. Why are you in such a hurry? Omega Kotoka naturally saw it. In fact, from where they were, they just happened to be able to see a disheveled human head appear on the back of the strange nine-headed bird. That person held a large black bow in his hand, and in the blink of an eye, 3 black arrows as thick as an arm pierced through the air with a terrifying gust of air, stabbing towards Emolien's body. Soul-chasing arrows. Qin Jiu's expression abruptly changed as he blurted out. As the name implied, the soul-chasing arrow was an arrow that shot at a person's soul, causing the person to die and the Tao to disappear. If an ordinary person was hit by this soul-chasing arrow, they would be completely gone. If a powerful cultivator was unlucky enough to be hit by this arrow, they could still save a little if they could find a godly doctor within 3 days. However, if they were saved, they would lose all their cultivation and become a cripple from then on. This strange bird really had a vicious mind. Who would have thought that after fighting for so long, it actually had something hidden on its back that could shoot arrows? Emolien was now floating in the air, her left hand holding the sword to cut down the fireball that the nine-headed bird shot out. Her right hand was controlling the fire dragon to strike the bird's head. Seeing that the 3 soul-chasing arrows were already in front of him, there was no way to dodge. A flash of red suddenly appeared beside him and yanked his arm. Countless vines weaved into a net with a wave of his hand, catching the 3 soul-chasing arrows that were flying at high speed. The soul-chasing arrow was trapped in the net. It shook a few times before it broke free from the huge net and shot towards the moon. However, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal had already pulled Emolien and retreated to the side in a flash. However, these 3 soul-chasing arrows continued to stare at their target, Emolien, relentlessly. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's eyes darkened. With a wave of his hand, hundreds of wooden vines flew towards the strange nine-headed bird. In a matter of minutes, it was encased in a huge cocoon. Emolien moved forward in a flash. Black Moon flew out of her hand and rapidly pierced into the middle head of the strange nine-headed bird like a shooting star. The strange bird let out a mournful shriek. One of its eyeballs fell out and landed with a thud. Chapter 4183. At the same time, a terrifying scream came from above the bird's back. It turned out that Holy Sun Mi-yen had seized the opportunity to stab the person who was lying dormant on the bird's back and attacking Emolien. That person suddenly rolled down from the bird's back and was beheaded by Holy Sun Mi-yen with 2 swords. When they looked back, they saw the 3 soul-chasing arrows chasing after the crown prince, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Prince Emo was expressionless. Several black flames sprang out from his fingers and suddenly wrapped around the 3 soul-chasing arrows. Young Master Omega Kotoka looked at the Crown Prince coldly. The 3 soul-chasing arrows were wrapped by the Crown Prince's black flames and melted into a black liquid in a matter of minutes. Divine Weapon Master! Everyone was shocked. Those who understood could not help but open their mouths wide. These 3 soul-chasing arrows were definitely not ordinary items. Prince Emo could melt them in such a short time with only 1 hand of black flames. It was clear to see just how powerful the Tao of artifact forging was. Any weapon with spirit that dared to offend him was simply courting death. However, with a swipe of his hand, Emolien collected that melted liquid into a bottle. At the same time, the 9-headed strange bird roared and broke free from its restraints. But soon, under the joint efforts of Holy Sun Mi-yen and the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, the strange bird was entangled by a layer of water spirit wall and a wood spirit wall. Emolien flew straight up and raised Raven Moon in her hand. At the speed of light, she cut off half of one of the 9-headed strange bird's heads. The strange bird was in pain and let out a mournful and ghostly scream. Its sharp and strange voice instantly made the practitioners who were fighting with the corpse puppets dizzy. The strange bird immediately dragged its huge wings and turned around. It left everyone behind and hurriedly escaped from this place. The broken carriage frame immediately fell from the sky. From time to time, there were solid pieces of wood that fell into the crowd. Everyone dodged and looked up to see the strange bird escape. A large number of harpies also seemed to turn and flee in panic under the strange bird's shrill cry. A sense of relief rose in their hearts, and they heaved a long sigh of relief. Finally, these things were driven away. However, Emolien and Arbor's expressions were not relaxed at all. Their faces were heavy. The things that Tianyin could bring out seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. In the future, what kind of good days would the people have? Although the remaining corpse puppets had all been taken care of, the corpse puppets were still alive. However, the people from Arbor were not relaxed at all. After all, it was hard to say whether the injured people would be infected on a large scale. A good Heavenly Yuan competition had ended in such a way. Everyone couldn't help but sigh. Emolien turned around to look, only to see that Second Qin, who had originally been standing there, had already left. Eldest young Master Qin was leading a few juniors of the Qin estate to help treat the crowd. "What are you looking at?" The little stoic tugged at his sleeve. Emolien shook his head. He was thinking about how much Omega Kotoka wanted him dead. But did he think that as long as he died, he would be able to mend his relationship with Jojo? What kind of sweet dreams were they having? Even if he was no longer around, wasn't there still Duanyu? When was it his turn to take care of Jojo? Bah. Why was he assimilated with Jojo? No matter who he met, he always liked to use Duanyu as a comparison. When the two of them exited the holy auspicious arena, they saw a scene of devastation. The streets were filled with rampaging corpse puppets and the figures of the city guard hunting and killing. The two of them looked at each other. Chapter 4184. Their moods were naturally heavy. They didn't expect that Joe City would be the first place to be attacked by the corpse puppet army and cause serious damage. Previously, they had only attacked small villages on the outskirts of Li City and Song State's Eagle City's Little Li town. The crowd definitely wouldn't be as dense as Joe City. So Tianyun's actions have begun to escalate? Quick, catch him. Don't let him escape. After an angry shout, several people wearing the city lord's guard uniform quickly rush in their direction. How could the stumbling woman who was running at the front with 2 half-grown children in her hands outrun those ferocious guards behind her? One of the guards raises the broadsword in his hand and slashes at the woman's head without a care. Emolian flicks her finger, and a gust of wind flies out, directly breaking the blade. Half of the blade bounces off with a clang and is stuck in the wall at an angle. The expressions of the guards suddenly change. They turn to look at the blade stuck in the wall, then turn back to look at the handsome man in the school uniform, who is as clean as the wind. They uniformly take 2 steps back. The stone bricks on the wall are very thick, they are very clear. If one's cultivation isn't high, how can one flick the blade into the wall? The woman hurriedly grabs the 2 children and scrambles behind Emolian and Arbor, begging for mercy. "Young master, young miss, please save us, save us." "What are you doing?" Arbor's cold eyes look at the burly men in front of him. Since when can ordinary people be killed wantonly in this city? There are always some animals who take advantage of the chaos to make a fortune. Are these people guards or robbers? The leader of the guards still politely salutes them with cupped hands. This woman has traces of being bitten by a corpse puppet. "We are following orders." "No, no." The woman screams in horror. She doesn't care if they are in public and directly pulls up her sleeves to show Arbor. "Young miss, young master, they are wrongly accusing me. I have never been bitten by a corpse puppet. These people broke into my house, killed people for money, murdered my brother and sister-in-law, and even attacked my 2 nephews. Therefore, the most chaotic thing was still the human heart." Arbor's eyes coldly swept over those people, and the corners of his mouth curled up in a cold arc. "Kill them." "Miss, what are you doing?" The leader of the guards finally panicked slightly when he saw several black-clothed youths with extraordinary skills surrounding him from all directions. "We're just doing our job. Anyone bitten by a zombie will quickly turn into a zombie." A vine whipped the man heavily against the wall. Arbor pursed his lips and looked at him coldly. When the man got up, he lashed out with his whip again. After 7 or 8 lashes, the guards were so scared that they were trembling all over. They knelt on the ground and kowtowed repeatedly. This woman and those 2 children didn't have the slightest bit of corpse chi on them. These guards actually dared to make a move on the lion's head and swindle her, Xiao Mu. It was simply laughable. Jiawei City is going to fall into chaos. Emolian raised her head slightly and looked at the dark sky. In the evening, the entire Jiawei City was shrouded in rain and fog. Everyone gathered in the city lord's residence and could clearly hear the chaotic roars of the corpses. The city lord fled with his family. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.